Okay, Audrey, we're all set to go.
Great, thank you. Good evening. I would like to call this meeting to order at 7:07 p.m. Welcome to the Monday, January 25th, 2021 City of Burlingame Planning Commission meeting. For all in attendance today, please note that this meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will be uploaded to the city's website after the meeting. To assist us in running a more smooth and efficient meeting, we will need all members of the public to keep your video off until it is time for you to speak. If you would like to speak during the public portions of the meeting, please raise your hand by clicking on the participant button at the bottom of your screen and click raise hand. You will be allowed to speak at the appropriate time and will be automatically unmuted and muted. Please note that there are several ways to submit comments during this meeting. You may send your comments by email to publiccomment@burlingame.org. Staff will be monitoring emails submitted during the course of this evening, which will be read at the appropriate time. The length of the emailed comment should be commensurate with the typical 3 minutes customarily allowed for verbal comments. You may also submit your comment using chat in Zoom by clicking on the chat button located at the bottom of your screen. Staff will then read the comment at the appropriate time. Lastly, you may raise your hand, again in Zoom, by clicking on the participant button located at the bottom of the screen and click raise hand. Members of the public who are participating in the Zoom meeting by phone can dial *9 to raise your hand. So moving on to agenda item number 2, roll call. The record should note that 5 members of our commissioners are present this evening. Note that Commissioners Taronis and Sargent are absent tonight. Agenda item number 3, approval of minutes. We have meeting minutes to review and approve from the November 23rd Historic Preservation Commission meeting, followed by regular Planning Commission meeting, and the December 14th regular Planning Commission meeting. Are there any comments, changes, or discussions regarding these minutes?
Madam Chair, I will recuse from the December 14th. I was not in attendance at that meeting.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Loftus. And with that being the case, if there isn't any other discussion, I will separate this approval into 2 motions. So the first two, I move that we approve the November 23rd Historic Preservation Commission meeting, followed by regular Planning Commission meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Say, seconded by Commissioner Camarado. All those, any discussion on the motion? Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 5002. Oh, yes, 5002. Moving on to the second motion, I move that we approve the December 14th regular Planning Commission meeting.
Second.
Thank you. So we have a motion by myself, Commissioner Say, seconded by Commissioner Gall. Is there any discussion on this motion? Nope. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. The motion passes 4012. Moving on to agenda item number 4, approval of agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
Yes, there are 2 changes to the agenda this evening. Item 8C, 1509 El Camino Real, and item 8D, 1341 Marston Road, have been rescheduled to the February 8th Planning Commission meeting. So any members of the public that are here for those two items, again, 1509 El Camino Real and 1341 Marston Road, those two items have been rescheduled to February 8th.
Thank you. Do we have any recusals this evening?
I will be recusing from item 8B.
Thank you. Commissioner Camarado is recusing from item 8B, 1457 Vernal Avenue. Moving on to agenda item number 5, public comments for non-agenda items. Members of the public may speak about any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future Planning Commission agenda may do so during the public comment period. The Ralph Brown Act, which is the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the Planning Commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Please speak clearly into the microphone when it is your turn. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on any item that is not on our agenda this evening? See anything in chat or email?
There are no chats and no emails on non-agenda items.
Okay, great. Moving on to agenda item number 6, study items. We have none this evening. So I will move on to agenda item number 7, consent calendar, for which we also have no items this evening. So we will get started with agenda item 8, regular action items. So the first item is 8A 108 Channing Road. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to note I was not at the December 14th meeting where this was last discussed, but I did watch the video.
Thank you, Commissioner Loftus. Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we have a staff report, please?
This is an application for design review for a new 2-story single-family dwelling and detached garage at 108 Channing Road, zoned R1. The total proposed floor area would be 3,319 square feet, where 3,340 square feet is the maximum allowed. At the Planning Commission action meeting on December 14th, the Commission referred the project to a design review consultant with the direction to revisit window and door details and also the proportion of the chimney and columns. The applicant revised their plans and also submitted a response letter dated January 4th to address your suggestions. The design review consultant met with the project architect and property owner to discuss the Planning Commission's concerns with the project and reviewed the revised plans. The design review consultant is recommending at this point approval of the proposed project. Suggested findings for design review are found on page 3 of your staff report. This concludes my summary of the application.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff?
I have a question. I'm sorry, I don't see my raise hand button, but maybe that's a function of being co-host. But I had a question about the landscape requirement for the front and rear yards. I don't recall what that is.
In terms of the number of trees or just
Square footage mainly.
So for single family dwellings, we don't have a square footage requirement for landscaping. We do have a required number of trees, but the landscaping would be reviewed as part of the design review application.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then. If there aren't any other questions from commissioners, I am going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and anything that you would like to add about your project?
Sorry, let me find them. I apologize. This is a new system for us to need to unmute people manually. So give me a second.
Thank you.
It also may help if the applicants or property owners can raise their hand. That way we can see who they are.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Hi, my name's Kevin, and I'm the property owner. And during our last hearing, we had a number of comments, and we have since worked with our design reviewer, Catherine Nilmeyer, to come up with better architectural details. And these include the front elevations, making the porch columns a little bit thicker, and revising the door height from 6 feet 8 to 8 feet. And we also widened the chimney and the wooden door trims. Finally, we are using the Marvin aluminum clad windows throughout the project. And I believe we dropped off a sample of the porcelain tiles, and those are exterior grade, and hopefully those will work. So I'm here to answer any questions the commissioners may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? And I would say maybe for commissioners, if you can raise your hands and then I can call you in order as I see you raising your hands. Okay, looks like we don't have any questions for the applicant. So do we have any members of the public?
Madam Chair,
Oh, yes.
I believe the function of being a co-host means that the other co-hosts can't raise their hands. So I did see that Commissioner Schmidt was physically raising his hand. It might be worth it, even though it's a little more cumbersome today, to just cycle through each individual, or we can do a physical manual raise your hand, whatever you feel is best. But we want to make sure that the commissioners do have a chance to ask their questions, just because we have taken away that ordinary route for them to do so.
Yes, okay. I just need to make sure. I couldn't see everybody's little window on my screen. So I will try to be looking out for raised hands. So Commissioner Schmidt, did you want to ask a question?
Yes. Thank you for the tile sample. I did go and look at it today. Are you planning to do that tile both on the vertical sections that you're showing on the elevations and also then on the horizontal porch and treads all the way down?
That's correct. Yeah, we're going to cover the those steps along with the floor of the porch.
Okay. And do you have something in mind for the transition at the corner of the porcelain tile? Because the edges are not finished with anything, and porcelain tile used in this fashion has a tendency to chip.
Right. I think we're gonna go with the those metal corner pieces that we have used and we have seen on other projects done. The previous project we done was using these steel corner pieces, and they turn out to be pretty nice, and they protect the edges as well.
Okay, thank you.
So just while the screen is being shared, I can't see the windows. So, all right, let's see. Does any other commissioners want to say anything at this time? Ask any questions?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, I didn't have a question until I heard the answer to Commissioner Smith's question. I have to say, I'm curious about the metal corner. I don't know, is it a miscellaneous steel angle? What sort of corner is that? Metal can mean a whole lot of different things, and it could look really, really bad. And so for the applicant to say that it's like a metal one we've seen and it looks really good, can you tell us anything more about it? Because we're talking about what, quarter inch thick tile, and it comes to the edge, and one edge is going to show unless it's closed. And so I'm not sure what's being talked about. Can the applicant tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, those are kind of similar to when you have like a shower that with the tiles that ends at the abruptly ends, and then you need and you don't have like a matching piece at the edge. So what we normally do is put like a metal piece to kind of hold the tiles and provide like a finish.
Is this metal piece is an L shape, right?
It's kind of like an L shape, yes. It kind of
So the two ends of the thin edges of the tile butt up against this metal, and it gets grouted between the metal and the tile?
Correct, yes.
Okay, all right, good, thank you.
All right, let's see. Are any other of my fellow commissioners raising their hands? I think we are done. Is anybody, would anybody from the public like to speak on this item? If so, please raise your hand to be unmuted. All right, I do not see any raised hands. Do we have any chats or emails? Oh, I guess I'm not going to see the raised hands.
There are no chats and no emails.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments? Let's see. Oh, yes, Commissioner Camerado?
Thank you. So I do like the changes that they've made. I like, I thought the porcelain tile was fine. I think as Commissioner Schmidt discussed was the corners. Perhaps we could get something that came back as an FYI with a little bit more detail on that if my fellow commissioners think, but I do like the changes that they've made.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I think the project's come along. I can find it approvable in its current state with the conditions as stated in the staff report. Just as a FYI from the trades perspective, that metal edge it's like Commissioner Loftus was asking, it is an L metal. It has some webbing on the backside that goes behind the tile. It's a 1/16 of an inch thick on the edge. It's manufactured by a company called Schluter. They make all kinds of different tile systems, waterproofing and backing and edges specifically for this. Comes in different thicknesses and different finishes, but I assume that that's probably what the applicant was talking about. And it's common in the residential industry at this point.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes, I agree. I think I agree that the project's come a long way. I like the changes to the details and the scale and everything, and I think that that portion was heard. I have a concern that you pick the right corner piece for that tile. A lot of those are meant for interior only. I've used them a lot. They usually come out, they get damaged. So unless you really pick a thick enough gauge, it's really not going to be appropriate for stair nosing. Now, it's not to say that you couldn't get a stair nosing that has the appropriate thickness and rigidity for that. So it could be a trip hazard. It could be something that falls apart. So I would take great care in picking that material so that it functions the way you want it to. But otherwise, I can support this project as well.
Hello? Oh, sorry, I was muted somehow. I don't know if Commissioner Loftus has his hand raised. Maybe not. Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion for this project?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to move forward with this project as per the staff report, the approvals of the staff report. And that's it, I think. Well, do we need an FYI on that guard, on that
I
tile?
think that would be good.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Camerado, seconded by Commissioner Gall. Is there any discussion on the motion? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
I,
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. The motion passes 5-0-0-2. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,075, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations. So we move on now to item 8, agenda item 8B, 1457 Vernal Avenue. Commissioner Camerado is recusing herself from this item. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none. Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, I'll be giving the staff report. The proposed revisions to the originally approved project were presented as an FYI item at the January 11th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. At that hearing, the commission requested that the project be further reviewed as a design review amendment with a request to better understand what elements of the historic portion of the home are original and what elements are new or rebuilt. The applicant submitted revised plans and a response letter, date stamped January 15th, 2021, to address the commissioner's request for clarifications about the facade reproductions and original elements. The applicant is requesting approval of as-built revisions to the project that are architectural in nature. The requested changes are listed in the staff report and involve changes to siding, the rear French door, and windows on the right and left elevations. I'll note that Vice Chair Taronis could not attend this evening's meeting, but submitted comments via email. Those have been provided to you as a received after communication. And with that, I am available for questions of staff.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Thank you for taking the screen down. Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Will the applicant please step forward, state your name, and add anything you would like regarding the project? You may raise your hand.
Good evening, Commission. Tim Redanes, project designer. I believe the owner, Tim Baldwin, would like to speak as well. And I'll let him speak first, and I'm open to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for the quick time. I just think what's happening here is a little bit of miscommunication as to what we were trying to do, but I'll just take it really quick, step by step. I think there was an understanding, even though the plans stated that what would be happening was a dismantling of the historically significant structure and a retaining and of everything that could be replicated, or everything that could be usable going forward would be set aside and retained. And then any pieces that were, structurally defunct or had fallen apart would not be used. And so I think there was a misunderstanding there because the plans did call for a dismantling. I think some people thought maybe that the front of the house was going to be sliced off and then simply moved over. But in any event, what happened was throughout the dismantling process, our builder, Greg, found that some of the siding and the roof, some of it had just been had deteriorated beyond repair, and which I think some would expect, given that a lot of the materials were 100+ years old. And I think where there was an error was Greg, in his efforts to just stay on track and to do justice in putting things back together in a way that reflected the original structure, didn't note to the commission which pieces he was changing out or rebuilding. But, and so I guess we'll take ownership over that for sure. And I don't want anyone to think that was done maliciously or secretively. It was not at all. And I think the final result, as it's being produced right now, bears out a strict adherence to the original structure. I mean, what's been created is almost a perfect replica. And every item that was dismantled that could be saved, there's lots of decorative pieces and the doors and other woodwork was all kept and refurbished and replaced back in the structure. And then everything that wasn't able to be kept, like the historic windows, were rebuilt at significant cost to us so that they would be almost exact copies of what had been there originally. And so for anyone who hasn't been by the house recently, you'll see it really does reflect the plans in a beautiful way, and it looks exactly like what used to be there. So in my humble opinion, I think we've reached a good result of marrying integrity for the past and safe new materials where my 3 small children can live safely and not worry about single paned untempered windows and the like. So I hope that clears things up, but I can answer questions from what little I know, or Tim certainly can as well.
Thank you. Tim, did you have anything else to add?
No, I will answer any questions that the commission has, and we'll go from there.
All right. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Gall.
Yeah. Again, I'd like to express my frustration, as I'm sure that you all read in Commissioner Taronis's letter. These are not a new architect or a new builder to Burlingame, and I think that the conditions of approval are very clear. We went through a lot of this design to make sure that it was kept and the historical significance was retained. But that being said, can one of you help us with the changing of the windows? Not just that they were rebuilt, but on both your left and right side elevations, they are not what was approved. And I remember those. The discussion was very in depth about retaining those and keeping them so that the front of the house, at least the front portion of the house, would look the same. So can you lead us down the path of why that got changed?
Yes, on your far left elevation, the windows that gotten changed, after, yeah, Ruben, if you could possibly go to the side elevation, the left side, there you go. This was done after the letter saying that it was no longer historically significant. So we decided to ask for the change. We didn't do it retroactively. It's just taken this long to get onto the commission meeting.
And I can explain more about why that changed. I also, just to quickly clarify, on the right elevations, what looks like we're asking for a change actually is not, it's not being asked for. That what's there now reflects what the original approved plans call for. So there's just only one window
Correct.
on the right side. So just putting that aside. On the left side, what it came down to was there was a retaining the old glassed in porch created a weird dynamic where the dining room had halfway across the dining room was this were these glass windows, and then it just stopped dead way, and then it was just wall. So it was just done from an aesthetic standpoint to just create a centered window in the dining room and not have this very awkward window jutting out into the middle of the room. I would add too that given how close that window is to our neighbor's house next door, and with hedges going up in between them, you literally cannot see that from the side of the street from any perspective. So it's not, at least in my opinion, it's not desecrating the view of the structure.
Well, you know, that sunroom porch, I mean, even Tim, in your letter dated September 3rd, on the second page, you said,
September, yes.
We have agreed to maintain the enclosed sunroom porch despite its non-historic status. I mean, this was something that was discussed in depth, and I'm having a hard time
I understand, yes.
Why it just was changed on a whim, it seems to me. I mean, this just seems like disregard for the decision that was made. I mean, this was part of the design process. If you knew that the window was there, then the interior walls, I would think, would be designed around that. I don't get it.
Well, that is why we're asking you, Commissioner, the house is not done. We're not coming after you after they're living in it. This is the whole point of having this discussion. We are not going against you. We're asking for your approval or not approval. And that is, in other circumstances, people are already living in the house. Greg, the contractor's not done, Commissioner Gall. You understand that, correct?
I see that, but those walls are clearly framed in.
They are.
He was able, when we brought this up with him, that we wanted to stick to the approved plans, he moved beams around such that the original sunroom would be in place. And then once we said, hey, once we got the notification saying, enough has changed in the house such that it's no longer historically significant, Greg felt, I think, safe in just moving the beams around again so that we could have a centered window, and then being able to ask for it after the fact. But I do take umbrage, and I understand why, but I take umbrage. I think there's this feeling that stuff was done sneakily or maliciously. I promise you that was not our intent. I mean, again, our original plans called to scrape the house and put something very, very different in place. And what we've done is, and again, I have this because we have a painting of the 1908 structure now that is going to hang in our house, and this new house will reflect that history. We've done, I think, a beautiful job of recreating the structure. And this was not done because we're some new couple. I mean, we've been in Burlingame 8 years, and we love the history, we love the neighborhood, and we're not trying to subvert the rules or do something sneaky to our benefit. I would say that we're also paying a lot of money to build a house that is safe and that is new, and ideally one that is comfortable and doesn't have a weird window. So that's why we're asking. This was not done because we don't care about the rules, and I do think there is that feeling there.
Okay.
Or at least I'm
that is
picking up
not
on
our
it.
intent at all.
Okay, can you go back to your comment about the right side elevation? The plans that you provided for us show a previously approved right elevation and a proposed right elevation. Are you saying that these are not correct, what we have?
So
sorry, yeah. Unbeknownst to Tim, when we saw that when Greg was putting the structure together, that he had made the choice to put in 2 windows, like as you see on the bottom there, we freaked out and said, no, let's make sure we're sticking to what was approved. And so he went and covered up what he had started framing out for that second small window. So what is on the house right now and what will remain there is what you see approved there on the top.
And I can make those changes, of course, because this would be a binding document.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Any other commissioners have questions? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, I just have to follow up on what I'm hearing. I totally understand what the point of view of the applicant and the designer. And I'd ask that, they consider the situation they put us in, right? Which is we approve something and then the work gets done. And then it doesn't matter whether people are moved into it or not, the work gets done and we're put in this, I can tell you, unenviable position to say, yeah, okay, we don't want to have to force you to tear that out, but it's within our right we approve something else, right?
Yeah,
Understood.
So in my view, this is an unfair situation to be put into. I'm a volunteer. I understand that the applicant spends a lot of money, building what they're building, but I'm in my 6th, 7th year now of volunteering every other week for the Planning Commission, if I'd have to bill a really high hourly rate to be equivalent to what the applicant is spending, but it's really unfair to be put in this situation because we can say, tear it down, fix it. We approve something else, put it back. And I don't think that's fair of any applicant. And if it were just this applicant, if it were just this instance, it's a lot easier to deal with, but we see this over and over and over again. And
I totally respect that. I totally get it. And I do want to point out my wife and I, when we saw that Greg was trying to make stuff better for us in terms of just inside aesthetic, we immediately pushed back and we said, Greg, no, we want to be good citizens. This is what was approved. He immediately covered what he had started framing up on the right side, which is these new windows. We said, nope, we don't want to subvert what was told to us. And then we went on the left side, and I very sadly, because with COVID, I haven't had a lot to do in terms of enjoyment during the day, but I would walk the dog over and I watch them pull timber up and start making the left side elevations exactly as approved too. And then what happened was we got this letter from the planning team saying, hey, all this stuff has happened and you're no longer historically significant. And that's when we took it as an okay to begin to what would in a normal situation just be a basic FYI, like a quick little aesthetic change that we would think would not cause a big dust up. So I do want to make clear we're trying to be good citizens here. I regret deeply that we put you guys in this unenviable position, and I don't want you to think that at all. We thought, well, those guys can kick rocks. Who cares what they approved? We're going to ram this through. That is from the very start. This ordeal has been one that has thrown a ton of unknowns and unexpected things our way. We are trying to do right by Burlingame, by our neighbors, by a whole list of stakeholders and constituents. And again, I regret that we placed you guys in a squeeze or in a way that made you feel taken advantage of. So for that, I really am sorry.
Commissioner Schmidt, do you have any questions? No, I just had one clarification on the right elevation. You said that's what's framed or built there now matches the previously approved.
Correct.
So I went to take a look at the house and I could have sworn I saw what looks like the bottom drawing, but without the left window, like one window and the door. I see the door and then I saw the window. I don't see a window like immediately attached to the left side of the door. And I didn't see a window that looked like the one that was existing. So what I think I saw on site was the bottom elevation just without the left window. Is that correct?
I honestly can't, I have no idea. I'm sorry. I thought, all I know is 1 versus 2. I don't know if the shape changed or something. That certainly wasn't, I literally have no idea.
I definitely did not see a window attached to the door. So something is different than the approved elevation.
We will take a picture of it, and after we talk through this, we can make sure that it's correctly shown.
Okay, thank you. So there's no other questions from the commission. Do we have any members of the public who'd like to speak on this item? Please raise your hand. I don't know if we have any chats or
There are no
email.
chats and no emails and no chats.
Okay. With that, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Yeah, I just had a question. Should Commissioner Toronis's letter be read into the record?
It was, we've treated it as a received after communication, so it is in the record, but we're not reading out loud into the record. It's similar to if somebody had sent a letter in, similar, between when the staff report was published and the meeting. So it's been provided to the applicant, and it's in the public record, but we're not necessarily going to read it out loud.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I was gonna ask the same question because I was inclined to read the 5th point in Commissioner Toronis's comments out loud, which is to say that we're stuck in the situation again where we would have to ask ourselves, was what we're looking at, would it have been approvable if this is what had been presented to us at the beginning? And I think his assessment is correct. The work that's being done is sound, and it replicates the original scale and detail, etc. And he says, I find the design approvable, though the process and loss of historic status are frustrating and highly unfortunate. I think that's where we are. The quality is clearly good, is high, and it replicates detail. I just don't know what to say other than this is extremely frustrating, and we need to make it more painful for people not to follow the approved plans somehow. I don't know if we create a planning approvals bond or something that is given over if people decide they want to change things. I don't know, but something needs to happen because this is really, really not fun. It's a bad situation.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I would agree with that comment. And, because a lot of time was spent on this, and there was a lot of public input on it as well. Again, I go back to my comment about the sunroom window. That was something that was discussed, and we approved it with that sunroom window. And to me, if I was going to be designing the inside of the house, I would work with that as an exterior element and say, okay, we need to work around this on the interior because they both work together. I mean, changing it from the outside because the interior didn't work is exactly the same thing except for backwards. I'm concerned about this proposed versus previously approved right elevation. I took a quick look at it as well, and I thought I just saw the one window as well. I don't think I saw the window next to the door. So that for sure needs to be cleaned up. But my inclination, to be perfectly honest, is I get it that some of the windows were rotten. If that kind of thing happens, that should be kept so it can be shown to us or so that we can be assured that that in fact they are rotten. The historic mitigation has been thrown out the window by the applicant and the builder. So my inclination would be to build it as per the approved drawings on both the left and the right side elevations. I think that front is probably workable. I mean, that's okay with me. I get it that the windows had to be replaced, but I don't know. I'm inclined to go back to the original plan as far as the sunroom and the right side elevation and window location.
Sorry, Tim, we're now, we have closed the public hearing, so we're only hearing from the commissioners. Commissioner Schmidt, any comments? So I think that was a no. I definitely echo what my fellow commissioners' frustrations with this whole process and where we are now, and especially with this experienced applicant and builder. I do feel that what has been built is of high quality and as true as possible to the original. Don't believe the right side elevation is reflecting what has been presented this evening. So I think we need some further clarification on that. On the left side, I do agree that the neighbor to the left is very close to the house, and it is difficult to see what the difference between what should have been there and what is there now. We don't have the benefit of the floor plans in this submission, I don't think, or maybe it was in some other document in the packet, to check the floor plan against the currently proposed windows. So I'm uncertain about what to do there. Kind of stuck in the middle here. Maybe we need to have a yes.
But I had another
Gall.
Part of the problem that I have is that a lot of these, the variance and the special permits were granted because they were supposed to be keeping this historical house. So if you say, would this be provable from the get-go if it was a new house, it probably wouldn't, because it's going to be too close to the other house. But the whole point of this was that they were keeping the old house. So to change it, as much as it's being changed, you're sort of doing an end around on the variance and the setbacks on the side. So I can't come to the same conclusion. I agree that the quality of the work is good and it looks very nice, but I'm frustrated with how this has come about. And so my frustration is leading me to, let's go back to what was approved. At least in the design of it. I get it that some of the materials were rotten and had to be replaced, but that should have been brought forward much sooner than this.
Mm-hmm. Make a good point there. Would you like to make a motion, Commissioner Gall?
Well, I would make a motion to deny the application and that the plan, that the house be built as per the original plan. Or the original approved plan.
What about the rear elevation? We didn't talk about
I don't have a problem with the rear elevation because that's new and that wasn't considered part of the historical part of the house. It was, that was all going to be new anyway. So I don't have a problem with the rear. I don't have a problem with what was changed on the front, the material at the gables, the newer gables on the second floor. I don't have a problem with that, but I think that the windows should be put in as per the originally approved plan.
So through the chair, if I could interrupt, and then, so what I'm hearing is the issue, at least with Commissioner Gall and the motion, is with the right and left windows on the first floor that correspond to the historic portion of the house, the original portion. You're okay with the other changes, so the gables, the French door on the back and such. So
Yes.
If I could, sorry to be out of line here, but if the real focus is just those windows on the front, right and left side, perhaps the motion could reflect that a little more more specifically and then allow the other changes.
So I would make a motion to approve the changes on the front and the rear of the house, specifically the French door in the back and the gable material on the front. However, I would not, I would make a motion to deny the changes on the left and right elevations in relation to the window size, location, and type, that they should be built or installed as per the originally approved plan. Is that clear enough?
Looking for, and I think that was one motion, correct, Commissioner Gall?
Yes.
So we would be looking for a second. Not hearing a second. Does another commissioner have a different motion?
Commissioner Loftus has his hand up.
Yeah, I guess before I can take any action on this, I got to admit, I'm confused by the timeline here. So I see in the staff report that after receiving, there's a sentence, after receiving the documentation, planning staff, there was a complaint, there was no documentation of what had happened. Further investigation was done, and after receiving the documentation that was done after the fact, planning staff made the determination that because more than 50% of the character defining features had been removed, that the facade was primarily a replication and the structure no longer qualifies. Those changes that were made, the 50%, more than 50% was changed. Was that changing out rotten stuff for new stuff?
Yes.
And so rather than stop and rather than stop and say, wait a minute, we got this approved because it's historic, the builder started replacing historic material with non-historic material and then came back and said, no, I need to understand this timeline because it means something to me.
So can I open the public hearing again to hear from Tim?
Yes, I'll
Your discretion, yeah.
and Mr. Baldwin as well.
And Mr. Baldwin. Tim,
Hi.
Yes, I will let Mr. Baldwin speak, but yes, the timeline has been stretched for 5 months. We did not get a notice that there was some type of planning meeting. All of a sudden, Erica emailed the owners and me and Greg saying it's not historic anymore. I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
no one gives me a straight answer, and Tim Baldwin can back me up, Mr.
I can explain. So from our perspective, what happened was a neighbor, someone in the historical committee or a neighbor, someone complained and said, hey, the house is coming, is up and it looks great, but it doesn't look historic enough as far as like materials. It looks nice and new. And so that kicked off a back and forth between Erica and Kevin and us about what was going on, whereby we then said, and again, my wife and I are not builders. We don't know how any of this stuff works, but basically we explained, okay, the following things had deteriorated. And we have, by the way, still at the house in the garage, we have the windows, we have some pieces of the siding. We can show that this was not done for aesthetic reasons. This was done because I have 3 kids under 5 and the windows were single pane glass, untempered, rotting around the core and dangerous, and that among other things. But anyway, we then went forward and kept everything that was salvageable. And we provided for Erica and Kevin. We said, hey, here are the pieces that are back on the house, the original pieces. So there's some gables, the original door, some of the beams in the front. I don't know the language, but beams. Everything that was the brackets, everything that was keepable was kept. We presented all that back to Erica and Kevin, who again, we pointed out this was not planned this way, but they said, okay, thank you. Based on what has been kept and what hasn't been kept, this house no longer qualifies as historically significant. At that point, my wife and I were like, wow, this sucks. We've been dealing with an unbelievable cost and headache for a year, and we're not even going to get the benefits of a historical register, which, as some of you might know, might include a massive tax reduction on the property, among other things.
It will. It would have.
Well, it would have. But anyway, the point, and that's fine. The point remains, we then said, all right, we passed this news on to our builder, who said, okay, well, I guess if the plans, if this house no longer is historically significant, I can go forward and ask for these changes, which included on the left side elevation, putting in a centered window and not this weird half sunroom, half. I think his words were even, these are the kind of changes that we can get. It's not changing the overall look and feel of the house relative to the neighborhood, and this is not some change that would cause a huge dust up, especially given, like I said, we're really near the other neighbor's house. We're putting hedges. This is not even something you'll be able to see from the street. All it means is that our dining room will have a window in the center and not a half wall, half window thing. And so, yeah, that was where we left off. And it was basically based off the fact that, okay, it's not historically significant anymore. That was never our intention, by the way. We did not think, oh, if we change enough, then we can get this thing reversed. We were very much playing along with what we had been told to do. And so at that point, we decided to come forward and ask you guys for the changes in the back. And I think there's a little shingle detail on the new part of the house that was asked for. We will certainly go and on the right side of the house, get that little, if that window is not next to the door, that's absolutely not something my wife and I intended to do. We can absolutely get that put back in if that's important to the planning committee. But that's the timeline. And I hope it reflects to you that this was not, again, this was not my wife and I trying to bypass the rules or dupe you or put you guys in this uncomfortable position. We were very much moving forward with, well, this is nothing like what we envisioned. We spent a lot of money with Tim developing other plans. We had a very different timeline as far as moving in with our kids. We live up the street from the place now, but we very much we're not trying to get the designation changed or sneak one by you or put you in a frustrating position. We were trying to do right by this incredible process for which there's really no precedent. No one, when we bought the house, there was no, hey, you guys might have to keep part of it or it might be historically significant. I mean, I slammed the door on the day we bought it and like a piece of siding fell off the house. So that's where we are. And I hope that makes sense.
Just a slight further clarification. As you worked on it, the only pieces that were replaced, as I hear it, were the ones that were absolutely unusable. The parts that were correct. They couldn't be refurbished. They just had to be replaced. Yes, and I'm going off of what Greg, the builder, showed us and told us. But I went and saw it. It's siding from the 50s. And it's wood. I mean, the windows are still there. You look, it's just soaked through rotted. I'm not a materials guy, but soaked through rotted wood and glass that basically shatters upon touch.
Well, the windows, we do have a letter from SF Window and Sash, who's a very reputable replicator. I mean, we went through this. The timeline, Mr. Loftus, we've been dealing with this for 4.5 months. With the planning, we've all been working, and this has been a contentious, project just because of people writing in anonymously, the night before a meeting in December, and then, us getting pushed back to this meeting. It's not my intent, and I have a finished historic house under my belt in Calistoga, so I've just gotten a lot of animosity towards, oh, Tim, you don't know what you're doing kind of thing.
Well, and I think I would add too, that all of our neighbors who we've become friends with have said, wow, what a beautiful place. It reminds us exactly of the old house while allowing the new in too. And this wasn't done because we don't respect your authority. My wife's a lawyer. This is not how we work. And we never once thought that this was something that would be viewed as us circumventing the rules, or again, I never envisioned having you guys put in a position that feels this uncomfortable. So for that, I really, truly am sorry. Yeah, that's all I have to say. We've tried to work with the process such that there was one in place, and I think definitely mistakes were made on our behalf. I'm not saying we're without fault. Well, I would say I'm without fault because I have no idea how any of this stuff works, but I think even Greg would admit that he should have come and said, hey, planning committee, look at this stuff, it's not usable. I think because we're so far, this thing's dragged on for almost 2 years at this point. I think his head was, let's just put our head down and work and make this thing a beautiful replica that's both does justice to the old, but is safe and livable for my wife and our kids. So
Thank you for the further explanation. That helps.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant before I close the public hearing again?
Madam Chair, we might want to see if any other members of the public want to speak following that dialogue.
Certainly. Please raise your hand or send a chat or email quickly if it's going to be an email.
There are no emails and no chats coming in.
Okay. All right. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing again.
And sorry, through the chair, I just want to explain, the sort of delisting the historic status, the reason staff had to come to that conclusion was related to the environmental review status of the project, and that, with a historic resource, if the resource is destroyed, it causes problems for CEQA. The determination that it was no longer eligible for historic status allowed, for better or for worse, allowed the project to keep moving forward. If the proposal originally had been to tear down the house, that would have been a different kind of environmental review. So the intention was to try to, based on what happened, and when there were reasons why things were not restored. So the point was to try to clear it essentially, so there would be a way to move forward. The other thing I just want to mention, and it's just really related to historic resources, is that the intent was not to take away property tax abatement possibilities. The Mills Act is designed, it is a property tax abatement and it's generous, but the intent is to, historic preservation is expensive. So the point of having that tax break is to spend the extra money. It is more expensive to restore an old house than it is to rebuild. Certainly I think we can all agree this wasn't the direction we hoped, but we have been working with the applicant to try to find a way forward and also learn from this. I just wanted to provide that background.
Thank you. Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, so let me start the comments then. Here's where I've come to, having a little bit of better understanding. I'm sort of with Commissioner Turonis in his letter at this point. I think had we known in advance that the historic materials were unusable, then we wouldn't have asked the owner, the applicant, to rebuild those unusable materials in the same way. We've had other historic, perhaps not strictly historic resources, but historic type resources come in front of us. And we've lamented the fact that we had to lose those pieces of the fabric of the community. But, the floors were falling in and all sorts of horrible things were wrong. And it made no sense at all to rebuild them. So this is a smaller version of the same thing. As you get into a project, if you're working in an old house, and I've owned several of them, if you're working in an old house, you find things that simply don't work. They're not usable. And, if piece by piece you discover that and you couldn't have known it in advance, then, the story is more palatable to me. I think had we known in advance that the material was bad and it would have had to be replaced, we wouldn't have asked them necessarily to rebuild in the same historic fashion. We would have put it to the same test that we put every project to that comes before us. And I think that was the gist of, if I'm understanding Commissioner Turonis's letter, that's the gist of his letter. it's, you know, I think it is sad, no doubt, as Commissioner Gall says, that we lose this. I am convinced that nothing malicious was intended. We're all frustrated because we find ourselves in the situation over and over again, slightly different situation. But you know, I would have found what's being put in front of us acceptable had it come to us as a design after we found out that the material was unusable on day one. We might have fussed around about the width of the windows or something, but you know, generally, I think that the project is approvable. So that's where I stand right now. I won't make a motion until other people have made their points, but that's where I am right now.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I would just make the point that I'm not objecting to the new materials being used so much as I am to the change of the exterior design on the left and right sides. I get it that things are rotten. I've run into that myself and had to rebuild things or have things made that were not original that we were trying to hold on to. But so it's not the idea of the materials being replaced with new materials to me so much as the change in the layout of the windows on the left and the right side, specifically the sunroom and the side door windows. I think that should go back because that was debated at length when this was originally approved. You know, so I still stand by where I was before, that I think that those windows should be put in as the approved plans show.
Commissioner Schmid?
Yeah, I want to thank the applicant and the owner for, you know, putting up you know, letting us know what happened and being honest about it and everything. And I can appreciate how long this process can take. And in going by the house, I've lived here a long time. I've liked that house, and I think you guys have done a good job at making a nice resource. I'm kind of more of the opinion that the left and right side were more important when they were historic. I don't know that we would have looked at it and just said, well, let's just do the front facade. You kind of do need to go a little bit on each side. And so I can appreciate Commissioner Gall's comment about that. But I do think now at this point, since those materials and that elevation isn't really going to be historic in nature, I can understand the desire for the changes being made, and I can support them. And I do feel, you know, our conversation with Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Rodez, that they have made an honest effort to try and push this project through. And I can appreciate the amount of time and money that has gone into making a project like this. So I'm in support of the changes, but there may be others who still want to talk.
See, I think that just leaves me, a little small group here. Yeah, so I already spoke earlier that, you know, that it's unfortunate where we are, what we're, you know, discussing tonight. But I do feel that if the discussion is really now down to the left and right sides, that I empathize with, is it Tim? Sorry, Baldwin. Sorry, the names have disappeared here. Yeah, Tim. Both are Tims. Okay. Sorry that with Tim Baldwin, that the dining room would be, you know, odd with half front porch windows coming through half the room and then a blank wall. And because I saw how close the house to the left is to his home, that it is difficult to see the wraparound of those sunroom windows. They have retained some of them, so it does wrap the corner. And With that, I'm okay with the left side. The right side, in theory, looks fine to me as proposed. I don't have a floor plan again to reference this evening to understand what's happening inside that maybe could explain, why these two windows are being proposed where they are. The originally approved design didn't have a window on the right side and in the immediate front corner. So I actually feel it's an improvement to add some more glazing there where there is some good exposure to light. Actually, that's a driveway side, so I guess that's getting some good light exposure anyway. All in all, I can also see approving the proposed drawings as they are presented in the drawings as we see them tonight.
Madam Chair, I thought I understood that the right side was being built as approved.
No, that's what they said, but that's not what I see there.
I know, but I thought I understood that
that they would go back to it.
The designer is behind and the owner has asked the builder to put it in as it was approved. So we're really talking about the left side at this point. Okay, yes, that's what I thought. So we're talking about talking about the sunroom windows only, essentially.
Yeah, I think we need to clarify if the right side will be built as per the approved drawings because they currently are not. I know that was mentioned this evening, but from what Commissioner Gall and I saw on site, that's not the case. So that may need to be a clarification with, I don't know if that would be an FYI, something that comes back in.
Through the chair, I could jump in just to suggest, should there be commissioners that want to approve the changes as shown on the plans, that can be an action that the commission takes. And then if it turns out that what is actually in the field is not what's shown on the plans, then the applicant can come back or they can show what's on the plans. But what's before the commission tonight are what's shown on the plans. And if what you see on the plans is acceptable, then that is something that could be approved.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I don't want this to stretch out another 5 months. This is, I can see how this would make people crazy. As I understand it, what we're really talking about is a request to approve the left side changes at this point. Right side will be put back in place as the right side was approved. So I move that we approve the requested changes to the left side only, with the understanding that that material was unusable and it would have been better had, well, I won't go into that again. It will be built as per that we approve the left side as shown, right side to be built as approved. With an FYI, the drawings need to be updated to reflect that.
I'll second that.
All right.
Madam Chair, before we go to a vote on that motion, we still do have Commissioner Gall's motion. So if he would like to withdraw, we can certainly do that.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Loftus, seconded by Commissioner Schmid. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Gall.
Nay.
Commissioner Loftus.
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid.
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion barely passes at 3-1-1-2. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, okay. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,075, which includes noticing costs. Congratulations. All right, so we move on to item 8C, 1509 El Camino Real, which has been continued to the February 8th meeting. And then agenda item 8D, 1341 Marston Road has also been continued to the February 8th meeting. So our next item for discussion is agenda item 8E, proposed ordinance amending Title 25 of the Burlingame Municipal Code regarding regulations governing commercial cannabis activity. For any, oh, there were no project site to visit. So may we have a staff report, please?
Certainly. This is an ordinance to replace the existing cannabis regulations in section 255860 of the municipal code with a new chapter that allows cannabis retail delivery from businesses located within the city limits. The city council first reviewed the topic of cannabis retail delivery on October 5th of 2020 and directed staff to prepare an ordinance. The direction was for the ordinance to allow cannabis retail delivery from non-storefront businesses, but not allow retail storefront cannabis operations. The definition of non-storefront cannabis retail delivery is defined as a business or operation, whether for profit or nonprofit, whose premises are closed to the public and which sells cannabis and or cannabis products exclusively by delivery, and for which a state license, a type 9 non-storefront retailer, is required under Business and Professional Code, section 26, et cetera, and following. This definition does not include any storefront component where customers purchase the products at the physical premises of the retail establishment. Given the low profile, non-storefront nature of this business type, the ordinance specifies that non-storefront cannabis retail delivery be allowed as a conditional use in the city's industrial land use district, specifically the Innovation Industrial Land Use District in the general plan, which corresponds to the present Rollins Road and Inner Bay Shore zoning districts. And just for clarification, the use would not be allowed in the North Rollins Road Mixed Use District, nor any other district in the city other than these industrial zones. The ordinance would have operational requirements for both non-storefront retail delivery businesses located in Burlingame, as well as delivery services originating from outside the city. And the reason for regulating both is that those delivering into Burlingame are held to standards comparable to those required for the businesses that are located within the city. Operational requirements for non-storefront retail delivery businesses located in Burlingame would include prohibition on external signage, prohibition on on-site sales and public access, prohibition on delivery vehicle signage, prohibition on cannabis in plain view, prohibition on advertising business address, access and security requirements, drop safes, and odor control systems. Beyond those uses required by state law, in particular cultivation for personal, medicinal, or adult use and deliveries, the ordinance does not allow any other cannabis-related activities. The Planning Commission action is a recommendation to the City Council, and it can include any changes the Commission may want to recommend to the Council if there are any. And that includes the staff report, and I'm available for questions of staff.
Thank you. Commissioner Gull?
Yeah, I had a question. I think this may be more in line with the city attorney. Is this Senate Bill SB 94? Is this is just that it's not a requirement that the city allow cannabis dispensaries, correct? I mean, that's just up to us if we want to have them or not.
I would have to go back and look at, there's been a lot of different Senate bills that have come out on it, but no, we do not need to require distribution centers in the city. That's something that the city is choosing to do. There's financial incentives for it. It kind of varies with the elections, so it's a little bit complicated, but ultimately the cities can generate revenue from doing that. And we now have the permission of the state government to do so. We get to figure out what level that the city of Burlingame feels is appropriate and what areas we feel it's appropriate to have it in, which is one of the big questions before you tonight. Since this is a zoning ordinance change, we want to make sure that not only does the Planning Commission believe that this is an appropriate use in Burlingame at all, but that it's specifically a good use for these land use districts.
Thank you.
I have a quick clarification question, or maybe it's a language question. On page 3 of the ordinance, in the last sentence of the first paragraph, it says, as stated above, the draft ordinance specifically excludes any storefront component whereby customers purchase the products at the physical premises of the retail establishment. How is that differentiated from one who purchases the product online and then asks for pickup physically on site?
So in this instance, they would not be able to pick up on site. So they could order online, and most likely that is how the order would occur. And then the order would be dispatched from the location in Burlingame, but no customers would be allowed to pick it up. So it would have to be home delivery or business delivery to an address.
But how is that monitored? How is, I guess, the business, if they choose to allow someone who just happens to be down the street to come? I realize they're not advertising their address. If somehow that is, discovered, through the business application process where address will be made public, how does that prevent someone from requesting pickup at the site? And how is that prevented?
So it would be, and certainly if the interim city attorney wants to jump in, but that would be a violation of the zoning as well as the conditional use permit. And should this occur repeatedly, the conditional use permit could be repealed. The ordinance is set up so enforcement is through code enforcement. So be similar to any other conditional use permit where they're not abiding by the conditions in the permit. It is revocable or correctable. So it would be similar to that. It wouldn't be allowed, and there's no exceptions for that. That would be a violation of both the zoning and the conditional use permit.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for staff? Oh, let's see. Commissioner Schmidt?
Yeah. So some of the requirements that I'm reading in it, like drop safes, is that something that we're requiring in our ordinance, or does that come under the state guidelines if they need to have that?
That's something that we're requiring. We did look at a number of different ordinances as models, and in particular ordinances from neighboring communities. We spoke to the staff of all of those communities to try to get a sense of best practices. And we felt that the drop safes were one element that was a best practice in terms of particularly the security concerns, and that seems to be a good way to deal with the concerns of theft or just high amounts of money.
So is there any reason we couldn't put it in the ordinance to be a cashless transaction, and that they do the purchase online and use an online monetary source to where the driver's carrying no money?
I think this is where I start to not know as much about the world of cannabis, but I think the cashless may have some issues in that, I don't know, I know there's all kinds of things with credit cards versus, I'm not sure we can do that. I'll just stop there. And it may be in the public comment, we may have some clarification from those that know more, but.
So then, are we expecting then that the drivers are driving personal vehicles, or that they're driving company cars that then have these other requirements that we're putting in there?
I can jump in on that one if you'd like, Director Gardner. So the way we currently have it written in the ordinance is that whatever vehicles being used would have to be registered for that purpose. So if it was a personal vehicle, it'd still be one that was registered to the city, and the person driving it would have to be a part of that operator's license. So I'm not sure if necessarily a person would want to use their personal vehicle, but either way, we would have that car registered to that business to know and to be able to track where it's going and run down any issues that may come up.
So, and is there any language preventing a third-party delivery operator from being involved?
As in, if someone tried to use an Uber or something of that sort? Yeah, so that would go against the operator's license, which is built into the ordinance quite a bit, where that person who's driving it has to essentially go through a vetting process before they'd even be allowed to do that. And the company is going to be responsible for making sure that that driver has the qualifications that we've put in the code.
Okay. But could they contract with a third-party driver who does that for several companies, and it could become a non-company owned delivery system?
Not in comply with our code. It couldn't do that the way it's currently written. If there was a way that they built in a third-party system to comply with our code and got an operator's license permit for those individuals as well, then I suppose they could, but they would have to do all the work and we still have the same safeguards that we have currently for the way it's written.
Okay. There's quite a bit of language about odor reduction. And is there any reason why we're not requiring all products to be sealed at the main point of manufacturing, and that this is a distribution only of sealed products?
I'll let Director Gardner answer that one, but that is essentially our understanding. We're putting in more onerous rules to make sure that just in case there is some sort of a transfer and it isn't a sealed product, that they would still be required to do that odor requirement as well. But I'll pass that one to Director Gardner.
That's correct. So I think some of the products are already sealed to such an extent when they arrive that odor would not be an issue, but it's a safeguard that we don't want to assume that. So this basically builds in a protection should something not be packaged in such a way. The obligation is to ensure that the premises themselves would not allow any odors out.
I understand, but I didn't read anything in the ordinance that would say that they couldn't break apart packaging and repackage on site.
I don't think the ordinance would necessarily restrict that. We just, to be blunt, would not want to smell it. So if the easiest way to comply is to just have everything packaged, so that's not an issue. But should there be some sort of packaging or what have you, that the obligation is still that nobody should know. You should not, from the outside, have that sense of odors coming from there.
Agreed. Okay. And sorry, I got in one of the sections it talks about greenhouse structure. And it would seem to me that I can't imagine us having a greenhouse as a secure building for this type of environment. And so the term greenhouse seems odd to me in this as a structure.
Which section was that in?
Page, Exhibit A, page 2, point G. Under, yeah.
Oh, right. Certainly, if that could be an amendment that the commission, I understand your point. We probably are not going to see greenhouses, and in fact, don't have a lot of greenhouses in Burlingame. So should that seem like it just doesn't fit, that is a amendment that could be suggested. I think that makes sense.
Well, my only point being is that if we don't suggest anything with the word greenhouse, maybe people will realize this is retail distribution only, and that we're having no part of any kind of cultivation, processing, or even packaging. Because I think that just leads us to that ability to have crime.
That's a good point. The greenhouse is probably a provision that should a municipality allow cultivation, that would make sense. But in this case, we're not. So I think it could be removed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? No. All right. Oh, yes, Commissioner Loftus.
Yeah, I just want to confirm we are talking about retail distribution only, no shop front.
That is correct.
And all of the regulations that I see are about making the facilities highly secure. And I see that in the city council minutes that Mayor Beach asked our police chief if he had any thoughts on the topic. And the chief had reached out to other cities that allow similar facilities. They don't report any real problems. He added he would want to make sure the facility has proper security. So all the regulations that I see in our proposed changes are focused on really on what you can't do and then how secure it has to be, correct?
That's correct. And we did review the ordinance with Chief Matucci and the other officers. So, and in fact, we started with a different model of the ordinance, and based on that feedback, we made some changes, and this reflects the preferred approach, which Chief Matucci indicated, and also works in that it's more of a code enforcement approach, but it does have the security provisions that the police department would want to see.
And it also does require the chief of police to approve the security plan. So that is a portion that was important.
And really the benefit to the community is in tax revenue. I see that the minutes from the city council meeting, the distributor made 11,000 deliveries in Burlingame on which we collected no tax. I presume it is taxed on the point of distribution, wherever it came from. And that the person who was meeting with the city council said that they expected to be making 250,000 deliveries a year on the peninsula from Burlingame, leading to perhaps $1 million in revenue. That's really what's driving this.
So it's that plus at least what was proposed or presented to us from this interested party was also, given the numbers of deliveries that are already occurring in Burlingame, it is a matter of convenience to have the products closer to the market. And if the market is in the mid-peninsula, this location would allow customers to have faster deliveries as well. But it's certainly the monetary considerations are important as well.
Yeah, I mean, for the community, there's hardly a more convenient community than Burlingame on the peninsula, frankly. Okay, I wanted to make sure I understood what was driving this and what we're really talking about. Thank you.
On that note that Commissioner Loftus just brought up, I'm reading that one paragraph, the Mayor Beach discusses the sales tax. She asked if it was correct that the city is currently receiving sales tax from the 11,000 deliveries in Burlingame, and Mr. Johnson replied, yes. Is that correct? So we are collecting sales tax currently from the 11,000 deliveries coming from elsewhere?
We may ask, I know Mr. Johnson is here, so he may want to clarify that in the public comment section. There's various facets to the sales tax versus cannabis tax versus other, so he may be able to provide a little more insight on that.
Okay, thank you. All right, commissioners, and no more questions. I will open this up to the public. Would any members of the public like to speak on this? Oh, well, actually, we should ask is it an applicant? Or,
They're not. So it is, to be frank, this was an inquiry from an interested party. They are not an applicant per se, and that the ordinance is being written for anyone, but this, to be completely transparent, that was where this originated from, was an interested party hoping to establish a business in Burlingame.
So do we have a representative other than the city at this? Is this the Mr. Johnson that we should be?
Yes, Johnson is here, yes.
Okay. Hi, Mr. Johnson. So would you like to speak at all about anything, or you want to just answer questions? Do you have
I mean, sure. I'd like to thank you guys for, bringing this up for discussion. As Commissioner Loftus said, Burlingame is a very convenient location in the peninsula, and the city is definitely poised to benefit from the large cannabis market that the peninsula serves. I will follow up with your question about sales tax. Currently, Burlingame is only getting the traditional sales tax that a city would have for any kind of transaction. I think, as the conversations move along the city, I would imagine a conversation around a specific cannabis tax would make sense, so that each transaction not only has a sales tax, but has a cannabis tax that the city can then glean for their benefit. But currently, there are some cities like Redwood City that, force you to pay a cannabis tax, even if that delivery is leaving to serve another city. But because you have to register as an operator in that city, they are able to tax the transaction as well.
All right. So could you clarify that maybe with the language is not written clearly enough for me, where it says that the city of Burlingame is currently receiving sales tax from the 11,000 deliveries that are coming into Burlingame from afar.
Correct. Just like your standard Burlingame sales tax that if you were buying a stick of gum at a gas station that you would.
Okay. Got it. All right. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Chair, do you mind if I answer Commissioner Schmidt's question about, and yours as well, about folks having the opportunity to walk up to a non-storefront dispensary and get product? That is against state law and local law up and down the state. The whole point of non-storefront is for that location to be in an area that's unrecognizable, but more importantly, to mitigate any kind of black market sales or unregulated sales. That type of walk-up function is improper and does not happen in any of our operations. And I'm sure it doesn't happen in most delivery operations, as it also poses a potential security risk for folks who want to keep a low profile. Although the security risk is very minimal, level of comfort for a new kind of operation in the city would make sense to not allow folks to be exposed so early on.
Thank you for that clarification. All right. So are there any, did you want to say something, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, one more. Commissioner Smith asked another good question about odor. So, but based off of non-storefront type 9 license regulations, the product that you are receiving in that depot that will then be dispatched for delivery must be manufactured and packaged by a distributor. So these are there's a difference between distribution and delivery license. Delivery license is cannabis in a vehicle going to a partner. Distribution is product coming from a cultivation, a grow, and then being manufactured, put into bags or into the packaging, and then distributed to the depot, which is what you're planning on allowing in your city. The depot has everything packaged, locked in. It kind of just looks like a storeroom at a grocery store. So there's no loose lettuce. It's all packaged and sealed. Horrible pun, excuse me.
All right. So are there anybody from the public would like to speak on this matter or ask any questions? Please raise your hand, submit a chat or an email.
Not seeing any.
All right.
Also, there are no chats and no emails either.
Okay. And no more questions from the commissioners. Let's see if I had any other. Okay. With that, I guess we will close the public hearing.
I'm sure it looks like Commissioner Gall has a question.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Gall.
Okay. I had a question for Mr. Johnson. Is the business mainly a cash business?
Thank you so much for bringing that up. I lost that in the notes for the questions I wanted to answer for you guys. So as you guys are aware, cannabis has a big barrier, which is banking, right? A lot of these companies don't have access to legit bank accounts because these banks are scared based off of federal law, right? And so cash is oftentimes one of the only mediums that you can use to pay for cannabis products, because these stores can't put money in a bank that they can trust, and they can't process debits. But for our operation, we actually allow ACH and debit. As we know, a cash-free process makes things just more comfortable and safer. And then honestly, people don't want to go out in front of their home, pull out cash and give it to somebody just as, an eyesore to whatever community you live in. And so, a lot of vendors have different kind of payment options, but I will say that to limit it to only kind of debit and credit payments would truly impact any operation that isn't at the mature status to kind of develop those long-term bank relationships.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now I will close the public hearing. I don't see any other hands raised. Commissioners, comments?
Madam Chair, just to clarify a little bit on one of the points you made earlier regarding taxation, I wanted to clarify that, as Mr. Johnson said, the sales tax that's currently collected is just the typical sales tax that we currently have. But at a general election, there could be a law change where we could make that cannabis tax, as Mr. Johnson noted earlier, which could be another percentage on top of any ordinary sales tax that we normally have. So not only right now are we receiving those sales tax as we normally would for any business, food, anything. Once we do, if we do get to the 2022 or whatever general election that we choose to bring a new law forward on, we could then have another stream of revenue from that pure cannabis tax. That is something that we cannot do with the way our law is currently written right now, because we don't have those, we don't have an ordinance that allows us to regulate it.
Thank you.
Looks like Commissioner Gall has a question.
Commissioner, I see Commissioner Schmidt's hand up.
Yeah,
Okay.
but that also then means that we are making sales tax on 11,000 deliveries, but we won't be making any tax on the 200,000 that are leaving our community unless we do something with it as well. So in order for us to manage the use of the roads and everything like that, I think that tax is a necessary piece to make the whole thing work.
I'm wondering if there could be a little bit clarification of some of the language used. There's some like nomenclature and that's being used, like the word depot that Mr. Johnson used, that could help to clarify. Wasn't there like a list of definitions or something? And I'm wondering in this ordinance if we could include some language that's used in the industry, in the cannabis industry, that would help to translate to the general public to understand, better understand the ordinance.
That could be part of your recommendation to the council. You're correct that definitions are in the first section, 2575030. A suggestion would be that in the non-storefront cannabis delivery, retail delivery, maybe the word depot is used in some way that just kind of conveys that is how it's functioning. I think that could be part of the description in that definition.
Thank you. Are there any, let's see, anybody else's hands up? It's a quiet group here. Oh, Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable with this whole thing. It seems like what we're trying to do is, it seems like a foregone conclusion that this is going to become a retail business in Burlingame. The city attorney had a question when I asked him a question, or had a statement when I asked him a question about if this is mandatory, and he said it's more of, is it appropriate? And personally, I don't feel that it is. I don't feel that that the marijuana business is something that Burlingame needs to be involved with. I get it that there's a carrot dangling in front of us of some tax money, but I was going around on the internet the other day and I there's an article I read on as dated October 16th of last year from, in the article, the president of the American Medical Association says, early data from jurisdictions that have legalized cannabis are concerning, particularly around unintentional pediatric exposures that have resulted in increased calls to poison control centers and emergency department visits, as well as an increase in traffic deaths due to cannabis-related impaired driving. Then in the same article, the president of the South Dakota State Medical Association says, there's evidence-based linkage between smoking marijuana and health issues. Marijuana isn't an FDA-approved drug and should be subject to the same rigorous approval process as other prescribed medications. So I'm not comfortable that we need this here in Burlingame. And, you know, I get it that there's all this control and everything and this vapor control, and so you won't stop. But believe me, people will know where your cannabis distribution spot is. And it's also it's concerning to me that, you know, this is a cash business. And I remember reading reports about you can't even put the money in the bank because the banks, you know, it's because it's not federally approved. So I think there's a whole bunch of issues there. And, you know, on one final note, I'd like someone to tell me, just give me one example of a city where everybody said, yeah, we legalized it and everything's great. This has just turned out so well. I mean, all I hear about is how cities have gone into real down the tubes, like Denver, for example. I have people I know that live there and they said it's become just this mess because there's so many people out there smoking pot. Hey, I get it. It happens. But I really honestly don't believe that most of the people that are getting it are using it for medicinal purposes. I think it's more of a recreational drug at this point, and I'm not comfortable even approving the ordinance, let alone, I mean, we can discuss it and talk about, you know, how the other cities are doing it, but I don't know that I'm in support of it at this point.
Through the chair, Mr. Johnson has asked to reopen the public hearing should you choose to. It's entirely up to you, but he may have some more information to share. Certainly the city is not obligated to approve this, you know, in any case, but in the interest of just hearing from members of the public, if you would like to reopen the public hearing.
Sure. So I will reopen the public hearing briefly. Mr. Johnson, would you like to speak?
Commissioner Gall, I think your concerns are well put and definitely understandable. I think, you know, when it comes to the American Medical Association, as you guys may be aware, there is this kind of push and pull and struggle between cannabis and big tobacco, right? And as you know, big tobacco has much more of an established presence. And so a lot of some of that narrative is strictly that and not really based in much data. But on the other end, I would give you an example of a city like Redwood City, who kind of, you know, maybe Burlingame would mirror in terms of, you know, opening it up for just non-storefront retail. And then now this year, they've just opened it up for all different types of cannabis businesses. So they've seen, you know, a good kind of business traction. They've seen community goodwill and kind of the connectivity between those operators and what they do for the community, that they've opened up another set of licenses from storefront all the way down to cultivation. And so I think that's like a prime example of a city starting small, kind of crawling before they walk and then walking before they run. And gives your city, you know, and you as leaders a great opportunity to kind of glean the data and the necessary impacts of these small amount of operations that will be in your city. I think another piece that's extremely important to Commissioner Smith's point on the tax point is any applicant that has to go through your city to get an application has to pay many a fee when it comes to not only zoning and planning, but also just application fees. So there will be an immediate, you know, glean of resources that the city will get. More importantly, they operate under your behest. So you are in control of what they do, how they do it, and when they do it. And so I think, you know, as you're aware, cannabis sales in the state of California are 1 legal sale to 3 illegal sales. So 25% of cannabis sales in the state of California are legal. And so I would caution to believe that there are black market dealers in the city of Burlingame that no one has aware of, and you're definitely not getting any money for that. And more importantly, those people are typically selling to minors. And so I think, this gives you an opportunity to put your thumb on the industry to a certain degree, and then also allow that to be able to whittle out some of the folks that you now know are not official operators in your city. Not to mention, there are ways to kind of use youth outreach to make sure that even in the event that, a parent or someone in your community sees that their kid is getting an illegal operation or illegal sale from an operation, that they could reach out to the city and make sure that you and your, police department can go ahead and mitigate and get those folks out of the community.
Can I ask a question? Between Brisbane, just to the north of us, and Redwood City, what other cities, I guess, what is the appeal of Burlingame versus any of the other cities in between?
So as you guys are aware, Burlingame is very, very centrally located in the peninsula. The peninsula has a very large, highly educated, and high average of home income. So the market here is huge. On average, Ease does 250,000 deliveries a year in the peninsula. That's not to mention some of the other large operators based in San Jose and or Redwood City. I think, a big part of what cities have seen is not only, most cities are losing money, by the bucket because of COVID and things like that, but folks are also seeing that they're trying to mitigate operations in their cities where they're not making any money off of it. And as you know, cannabis is just transitioning into the legal market for most vendors and most operators. And I think that, cities are realizing that the faster that they can get these folks from the illegal market to the legal market is as fast as they can process an ordinance that allows them to kind of put their thumb and monitor folks in their community. I think if nothing else, having a cannabis ordinance or having a cannabis, entity within a city allows you to for sure identify who is in your city, who deserves to be and who doesn't, based off of their willingness to go through the natural process to operate in the city.
All right, are there any other questions from the public or the chat before I close the public hearing again?
I just see Commissioner Loftus was waving his hand.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Loftus.
It wasn't a question. I thought we were commenting.
Oh, right. Okay.
Okay, I'll wait.
All right.
Madam Chair, before you close the public hearing, just in case you wanted to direct something else to Mr. Johnson, it is my understanding under state law, which is constantly changing in this environment, that to Commissioner Gall's point, we already are going to have to allow point-of delivery sales in Burlingame under the current state law. So we are going to have deliveries in Burlingame. Whether they come from Burlingame to Burlingame is kind of the big issue that's here today. Right now, if someone ordered marijuana from Burlingame to be delivered from Redwood City, it's still going to be delivered at their doorstep. Again, I believe there are many challenges and the law is subject to change at any time, but the way it is right now, we aren't going to avoid delivery sales, even if we did reject this ordinance today. So I wanted to bring that up now in case you wanted to discuss that at all on the way it's currently done with Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. All right, I don't see any hands waving at me. And I don't believe we have any raised hands from the public or any chats again. So I will close the public hearing once again. And Commissioner Loftus, did you have something you wanted to comment on?
Yeah, I want to try to unpack this. I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, what are we being asked to do? We're being asked to make a recommendation for something to the city council. Now, we're not elected officials. We serve at the pleasure of the city council. And our job is to address the uses and the physical characteristics of the city. That's what they ask us to do as specialists. And I, for one, am really hesitant to get involved in making value judgments about, what, if I follow Commissioner Gall's path, we wouldn't allow alcohol sales in the city. And we do that. We allow alcohol, and there are alcoholics and people, they drink and drive and all sorts of things, but that's not our purview. It's up to the city council to decide whether certain activities are allowed in the city. The question for us is, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, the question to us is, if we were going to have such a thing, does it make sense to have these regulations and to have it in this part of the city? That's the way I look at this. I don't know how else to look at it. They're not asking me to decide whether or not, I hope, marijuana, cannabis is distributed out of Burlingame or not. That's not my business. I'm not an elected official. So if I look there, if I maintain that very narrow focus on this, I don't see anything objectionable. And I see that, I see that there's maybe great benefit that our elected officials see in pursuing this path. And I see that, if they were to allow such a thing, then focusing on security makes a lot of sense. And I see that having these kinds of facilities, unmarked, hidden facilities in this part of the city make a lot of sense. So I personally don't find anything highly objectionable about all of this. And I'm glad it's not up to me to make the decision about whether or not this is allowed or not. Am I, and I would ask this perhaps of our city attorney, am I misunderstanding our purview here?
That is certainly the most beneficial aspect of having the Planning Commission look at this. It is going into our zoning code. Yeah. So anything that's going to affect zoning is a use. So if you found that it was not a valid use the way it's written in any of the land use districts, per se, you may be taking an action on that. But really what we would like feedback on for the recommendation, or for your recommendation to City Council, is looking at the ordinance as written and making sure that it is consistent with what you believe is appropriate in these land use districts, and that it's done in a way that's going to keep these land use districts and the health and welfare of them in the way that you would for other ordinances that we pass through you. But yes, you are correct in the fact that we are not trying to determine today whether we should go against state law or whether the decision to allow marijuana in Burlingame is necessarily the right or wrong one, so much as you are looking at where this should be allowed, if anywhere, which unfortunately does have some crossover. But
if I saw if I saw that this were next to a school, I might rightly say those two uses don't belong next to each other.
Absolutely. The state law did a little bit of that for you, but if you also felt, I believe that the industrial is not the right section for this, but there was actually a better place in the city and a better land use district to have this, that would also be very valuable information if you felt that certain elements of the ordinance weren't going to take care of security or weren't going to take care of odor control or were going to be detrimental to that land use district, and we could fix it in that way. That's certainly something that the City Council looks to the expertise of the Planning Commission to know and to be able to analyze as well and pass along in that recommendation.
That helps a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I have a question. So there's a minimum distance of 600 feet to I believe a residence or a school and a number of categories of sites. So with this fairly small area of the southern part of in this industrial zone around Rollins and the Inner Bay, I'm sorry, I'm losing all my words here, this Inner Bay district, is this a very small core of this area that's actually going to even comply with being 600 feet away, that'd be 200 yards away from the closest residential development that could potentially be built in the North Rollins Road zone?
So it would restrict, it would need to be 600 feet away from the North Rollins Road area. And that is one of the buffers that the state requires, these buffers. So it's there regardless. So that would be a constraint just within the Rollins Road area, but then you've still got the whole other Interbay Shore on the other side of the freeway, which it does have a school, so that would be a constraint. It has a continuation high school, but otherwise it does not have any other schools, so there's fewer the sensitive uses over there. So it's still a challenge to find a site. It's not it's not our job to necessarily find a site, but we've tried to identify some land use districts where probably there's more likely to be sites available that can still comply with those distance requirements from schools and other sensitive uses.
So commissioners, I just want to let you know our options essentially this evening is to make a recommendation for approval to the city council. We can make recommendations with changes to the city council, or we can make a recommendation for denial. Commissioner Schmidt?
Yeah. So we're affecting the zoning code at this point. When an applicant eventually does identify a site, then planning has an opportunity to weigh in on traffic impacts and the amount of cars that go in and out relative to that area so that we don't damage the neighbors. Because I'm assuming with 200,000 trips a year, there's a fair amount of car traffic, and we'd have to take into account how that car traffic is getting in and out of a small focal point. Would that be true?
That's correct in that a conditional use permit would be required, and then you'd make the same analysis and findings with the conditional use permit that you would with any other commercial use permit application that you would have within those zoning districts.
But is that something then, as far as them applying for the conditional use permit, would we already have standards in place saying that we would need a traffic analysis for that? Because we don't necessarily ask that of everybody who's getting a conditional use. Right?
A trip generation estimate could be requested if that was a concern with a conditional use permit, because you do need to make the findings that it won't be detrimental to the district and to the surrounding properties. So should that be a concern, that could be something that could be part of a conditional use permit application. And perhaps it could also compare to other industrial uses with deliveries to see how is it more, is it less, is it comparable to other uses that you would find in that same district?
So not that I think that it affects this document at this point, but that seems like a downstream implementation type of thing. That I think, because this would be a lot more of a delivery business than probably most others that we have. Okay, thanks.
Any other commissioners' comments, recommendations? Let's see, so we have to take some action here.
I think so. I think we've had a couple of items that Commissioner Schmid has brought up that we can make recommendations to City Council. For example, perhaps traffic study once the zoning is determined, the location. I think the idea of I think there was something regarding the smell and keeping it contained. So those are the two items that I heard that actually I was concerned about. I also was concerned about I don't know if, Kevin, do we have any discussion about police activity in these areas when we know they're kind of in sight, or how does it impact the police department, or do we need to have any discussion on that, or any recommendations to city council for extra police, help out in those areas?
At least from our discussion with the police department, was they did not foresee a particularly, more need for their services. The 24-hour security is typical of the providers in the first place, so the police are really there to, supplement that. But I know Chief Patucci had looked over this and talked to his peers, and felt that of all the different uses that the city could be looking at, this was, whether it's counterintuitive or not, is one of the lower demands on police services.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Yes, Commissioner Schmidt.
So in the document, the way it's written, really, we've only talked about a few wordsmithing items, and on the whole, I think that it covers many of the items of security, location. I think that we understand the buffers and the areas where they could go. And so at this point, for me, I don't actually see an issue here, and I would recommend that that this be sent up to the city council for their approval, and that we recommend it. I don't see anything here big that needs to be changed in order to be able to submit that. So unless there's further discussion, I'd make a motion that we recommend the approval of this zoning change to the city council.
I would second that. Commissioner Smith, do you want to make the change to the word greenhouse, however?
I would, and I don't know if that's a must. And I think that that's just a word clean for me, but if Director Gardner would like to have that in our motion, I'm happy to have that in there and request that change.
There was that, and then there was also a mention of the word depot for the definition of non-storefront cannabis retail delivery. We can work on that. So those would be two recommendations. We can also reflect, whether it's in the ordinance or not, just the interest in traffic analysis. That may be just something that's covered under the CUP, but we can at least reflect that to the council that this was an interest of the planning commission.
Could we also add, even though I know it's against the law, that physical pickup at the site is not allowed, or is not?
I think it is.
That's
there,
covered.
And
it is covered?
It's covered.
I didn't read that in there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of details. So it's hard to, but it's in there, yeah.
Absorbing it.
And if Director Gardner is comfortable, if you wanted to put that in your motion about the wordsmithing, Commissioner Schmidt, that's something that we should be able to take care of before it even gets to city council. So we can make that amendment to make it more clear on both depot and greenhouse.
So I make that motion. Do I have to restate it?
The motion was to recommend that the city council approve after staff makes the correction to greenhouse and depot in the definitions portion.
Correct.
I'll second that.
Oh, I believe Commissioner Loftus had seconded the motion. So thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Schmidt, seconded by Commissioner Loftus. Is there any discussion on the motion? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Commissioner Camarado.
Aye.
Commissioner Gall.
Nay.
Commissioner Loftus.
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Aye.
And Chair Say.
Aye. The motion passes 4-1-0-2. And there's nothing to say about that. No appeal language.
It's not appealable because it goes to council.
Yes, because it's going straight to city council at this point. So we will now move on to our design review study items. Agenda item 9A, 1835 Capistrano Way. For any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? I'm seeing none, I believe. All right, so let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for design review, special permit for attached garage, and hillside area construction permit for a new one-story single-family dwelling and attached garage at 1835 Capistrano Way, zoned R1. The previous house on the property was heavily damaged by a fire last year and was ultimately demolished in May of 2020. The lot is currently vacant except for existing landscaping and some remaining flat work. The applicant proposes to build a new one-story single-family dwelling with an attached garage. The total proposed floor area is 3,845 square feet, where 4,906 square feet is the maximum allowed. This floor area, the proposed floor area, includes some ceiling areas in the house that are more than 12 feet in height. The applicant is requesting a special permit for the proposed attached garage. The existing driveway and curb cut will be retained with the proposed project. A hillside area construction permit is also required for the proposed house. However, no grading is proposed. The existing landscaping on site is proposed to remain. This concludes my summary of the applications, and I'd be happy to take any questions for staff if you have any.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? I don't see any hands raised, I don't believe. So I will open the public hearing. Will the applicant please step forward, state your name, and add anything you would like regarding your project? Please kind of raise your hand so we can find you.
Hi, commissioners. My name is Sunny Gao. I'm the architect for this project. The planner did a pretty good presentation. There isn't much that I can add on. So this project we're proposing is a one-story modern farmhouse style single-family house with a two-car garage. Yeah, I'm here to answer any questions the commissioners may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Schmid?
Yes. What is the material that you're planning to use on the front porch? I noticed the stone on the walls and on the columns, but what is going to be on the porch and then on that first step?
Oh, just concrete. The two steps is just concrete, and then the veneer is on the column, and then the wood is rustic styled wood columns.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see any other hands up. So would anybody from the public like to speak on this item? Please raise your hand or send a chat message.
I'm not seeing any emails or any chats coming in.
I think we warned everybody out this evening with the discussions. Okay, so with that, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments?
Sorry, I'm seeing there's a hand from Ms. Hagberg. If we could just reopen the public hearing, I think we missed.
I'll reopen the public hearing.
And let me ask them to unmute.
Yeah, hi, we're the next door neighbors. And we appreciate, their, consciousness of the design and fitting in the neighborhood. Pleased with it. The only comment we had was just, having lived through the fire next door, we would be concerned about making sure that they clean up the hillside of any dead trees and fire danger.
All right, thank you. I believe you said I think you dropped out a little bit. You were just wanting to make sure that fire hazards and tree protection is.
Yeah, it's just the concern is there are a number of trees that were damaged by the fire. Some have fallen down, and good prudent thing to clear the hillside of any fire danger and do any trimming necessary.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? All right, one last ask. I will now close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments? Commissioner Camerado?
I thank you. One of the questions I had was due to the hillside there. I didn't see any documentation on the landscaping plan for the property. I'm not sure if I missed that, but I would love to see what they're planning to do other than the deck. I think there was a deck that I saw off the back, but I know that those lots slope up towards the street above, and was wondering if they had any landscaping plans. Oh, wait a second, I do see it. Nope. Proposed site plan. But I'd like to maybe have a little bit more depth discussion on that landscaping plan, perhaps with them in the future, especially for the backyard.
All right. Anybody else? Commissioner Schmid?
Yes, I think it's a nice looking project. I would agree with Commissioner Camerado that maybe given the light of the neighbor's comment and there is an enormous amount of growth in that back area, that maybe a bit more detail be put into the proposed site plan to better understand if those are trees not on the property, but how are they being managed and who is trimming them? Because it could be the fact that it's the neighbors up above just letting it overgrow. But there's definitely a lot of trees back there, a lot more so than what maybe looks like on this site plan. So maybe a little bit more clarity back there would help ease the neighbors' concern, as well as maybe make that a little bit more clear for all of us. But otherwise, I'm good.
Right, let's see. Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, I like the project. I think it fits in well with the neighborhood, especially with the predominance of the Eichler homes in that area. I can find support for the special permit for the attached garage, as that seems to be a pattern. Yeah, overall, I appreciate that they are doing a single-story home on the hillside and really alleviating the need for story poles on something like this. So I like the project. I'd like to see it move forward.
Would you like to make a motion to that effect?
Sure, I would move that. Well, I would almost go to the consent calendar, but I think that we should probably bring it forward on regular action because of the concerns about the landscape plan. Although I think it seems sufficient to me, but there are other commissioners who had a concern, so I would make a motion to bring it back on the regular action calendar.
I will second that motion. So we have a motion by Commissioner Gall, seconded by Commissioner Say. Is there any discussion on the motion? Oh, yes, Commissioner Loftus.
Yeah, I can't let a project like this go by without making my usual comment about the metal roof. I'm not a fan of the metal roof in Burlingame. In particular, the steeper the roof gets and the more it becomes facade-like, the less I think it's appropriate. And in this case, in a one-story house with a metal roof, it's obvious on the front sheet that the metal roof is half of the building. So you've got a half you've got a metal roof on top, and you've got an equal amount of normal sort of, you know, facade on the bottom. I think that's, again, I think it's inappropriate. I don't like the utilitarian material for use in Burlingame. Typically, I sort of generally ease off on it when it's lower pitch and when it's less facade like, but in this instance, you know, it's half of the building. And when I was out there today looking at in the neighborhood, I thought, well, maybe that's not really true, because you know, maybe that's not what happens in a one-story building. But in fact, I looked at a one-story house that had a shake roof, and what I see is half of the building is a shake roof and half of the building is an 8-foot facade of the one-story house. And you know, if everyone is willing to live with a utilitarian material that's half of a facade, then, you know, it's a nice looking composition. It's well scaled. It's got some nice components to it. My objection is that metal roof. So as do with that what you will.
All right, any other comments on the motion? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Hey,
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Mayor Say.
Aye, and I couldn't hear clearly what Commissioner Loftus was, a nay or an aye? Commissioner Loftus, was that a nay or an aye? Oh, a nay, okay. So the motion passes 4102. And we move on to agenda item 9B, which is 1037 Cortez Avenue. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, I believe. We will let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we have a staff report, please?
This is an application for design review for a new 2-story single-family dwelling and detached garage at 1037 Cortez Avenue, zoned R1. The total proposed floor area is 3,168 square feet, or 3,314 square feet is the maximum allowed. The existing house and attached garage would be demolished in order to accommodate the proposed project. This concludes my summary of the application. If you have any questions for staff, I can take those now.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Let's see, any hands raised? None. Let's see, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward, state your name, and add anything you would like regarding your project?
Hi, I'm Elaine Lee, the architect for the project, and Beth Taylor, the owner, is here with us also. Since you've all visited site, you know the house that's existing. It's has non-conforming setbacks on the right-hand side where the 2-story portion is. And we did spend some time investigating solutions where we might be able to remodel the existing house, but given the non-conformities and the attached 2-car garage, we opted to go with new construction. There's a number of Tudor houses on the block, and a mix of 1- and 2-story houses. It's an eclectic block, and we are pleased with the design that we're presenting. And I'm happy to answer any questions the commissioners have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, just one question on the front facade, the steel awning. What is that about? Is it got a slope to it? Is it just a flat insert between the two. Well, tell me about the steel awning. What do I see?
The idea is that there would be some slope built into it with an integrated gutter. So any slope would not be should not be readily apparent from the street, but there would be a downspout to carry away the rainwater.
I'm sure I asked my question the wrong way. I'm not really concerned with the slope. What I'm concerned with is what I believe I see is a probably 8-inch wide black piece of metal. Is that right?
Yes, off black. The idea is that the entry door would be steel, and the window finish would be in a similar color to that same metal finish. So it is all intended to be all within kind of a similar color family.
So when you say the entry door would be steel, do you mean as in industrial sash looking steel, or do you just mean it's made of steel? What are you trying to achieve?
A more industrial modern aesthetic. So the goal was to and Beth, if you'd like to chime in, please do. But the goal was to create a modern Tudor, and if the commission would like, we have gotten a jump start on a 3D model, a rendering, and we also have a photo of a house that was served kind of as an inspirational design. And I also have a photo of another modern Tudor that we've completed on Occidental Avenue that came before the commission also. And if it would help, I'd be happy to share those if that's possible, to share my screen.
Do we have that
No,
capability?
Sorry, we're not allowing the public to share screens.
Okay. All right, so I'm sorry, I won't be able to share those images. But yes, sorry, Commissioner Loftus, the idea is that it would be a more, quote, industrial look on that steel door.
Hi, I think I've just been unmuted. I just wanted to say it's the idea is it's like a rolled steel door. You see them quite often in modern homes these days, whether it's in a bathroom, shower door, or the front door, or a wine cellar door. It's meant to look like a rolled steel door. And the awning was to enhance the look of the front door, if that helps answer that question.
It does help somewhat. So the windows, are they industrial sash as well? And by that, I mean, you know, the old style warehouse windows would have been actually steel, and they would be incredibly narrow style and very, very narrow. Is that what you're trying to achieve in the windows and the door? Is industrial looking steel sash windows and doors?
Okay, go ahead.
The windows would not be steel windows. The windows would be aluminum clad wood windows. They're Pella Architect Series windows. So they wouldn't have the super narrow sashes as you would get with or as not a traditional steel window.
Well, given what I'm hearing, probably a 3D model. I understand you're working on one. That's good. We probably ought to see that, and any pictures that you can provide, which would clarify it, would be helpful as well. I'm having problems following what the intention is. You know, I guess I expected to hear, yes, all the windows are industrial sash, very narrow style steel windows, and so is the door, and therefore the metal canopy makes sense. but I'm not hearing that. So I'm a little bit confused about it. So I just need to get clear about what the intentions were anyway. Thank you.
Can I help answer that question again?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thanks. So I think doing a metal window is not, how should I say, just not very usable in a home, but it is, the windows are thought to match with the door in terms of the steel door would look, this modern look of it, and the windows would be more usable in terms of being the wooden aluminum clad, but with the black finish on it would match very well with the metal looking door. I hope that helps clarify things. And then the added steel above the door is just to enhance and add to the modern feel of the house. You know, we love the traditional Tudors in Burlingame, and I think it's very desirable and very appealing to me to have a little bit of a modern take on the traditional and the traditional Tudor that we see so often in Easton Addition and Burlingame Park and other areas of Burlingame. So it's meant to appeal to the neighborhood, but also have a small modern take on it.
I guess, yeah, to further just describe a little more of this window series that we've specified for the house. They have, relative to other, you know, wood windows, very narrow grids and narrow frames. So while it doesn't try to simulate a old school style steel window, they do have much more modern lines to them over a standard wood window.
Thank you. Are there any, yes, Commissioner Schmidt?
Sorry, I forgot to hit the button. I appreciate your explanation and the thought, and I'm looking at the windows online and they look great. So I'm happy with what I see as the direction of the house. One of the things for me while I was on site was the driveway location between the trees. I'm a little concerned on the ability to get a driveway in there without killing at least one of the trees on the left side of the site. Have you guys done any work with anybody at Public Works or anybody on the reality of being able to do that without killing that tree?
Not with the street trees. That one actually hasn't come up. I don't believe it's of a protected size. The one tree that has come up in discussion with staff, actually the neighbor's oak tree in the backyard. But we can certainly have our arborist give us an assessment and protection recommendations for those trees.
So I would do that sooner than later, because as I stood there, there wasn't really room for a car to go through there without because those two trees have roots going a good 2-3 feet out and in the sidewalk area, or not the sidewalk, but the planting area, but they're growing together. And so I think when you go to make that curb cut there, it's a challenge. Whereas your curb cut right now is naturally on the right side already with no obstructions. So that would be my concern.
Commissioner Gall.
There we go. Yeah, so I just had a question on the roof. If I'm looking at the rear elevation, in between the two gables, you've got the roof there at 3 and 12. And so if I look at the plan, that roof goes almost all the way back to the front of the house. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. There's two skylights in there. Would those be glass skylights with flat, a flat glass skylight as opposed to an acrylic dome?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Camarado?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say that I think this is a really nice project. Again, I would also like to see the artist, the rendition, the 3D rendition done. I think that would be really great. And then if you had, when you come back, again, if you could show us some examples of what you're trying to create from maybe another project, that would be greatly appreciated. But I do like the project. I could see it coming back on the consent calendar.
I have a couple of questions. Let's see, what are my questions? So I appreciate the massing of, or the siting of the house so that the driveway is on the left, adjacent to the neighbor with the one-story home, and the two-story element and massing of the house is closer to the house to the right that has 2 stories. But I'm curious if you've had a chance to review kind of what you're seeing from the windows of the 2nd story to your neighbor to the right, and what they may be seeing, since it may be bedroom windows against bedroom windows, or just wondering if you've had a chance to review that.
We took a look at it, and as best we could try to orient part of the reason why we cited the house, as you described, was to get further separation with the driveways between the houses. And so we'll need to spend a little more detail looking at exactly, where the windows are, and provide screening, as possible, if needed.
Okay, yeah, and maybe reaching out to that neighbor if you haven't already, just to ensure that they know what's planned there. And so it's better to combat these issues now than later. So just a recommendation. And then secondly, where the laundry room, pantry room, side yard door is, looks like you open the door and immediately there's a couple of steps, a few steps down to grade. Was there an opportunity to maybe deepen that landing so that you have a little bit more of a resting spot, or even a proper landing in front of those steps before you go inside? Just felt a little shallow there. Of course, it's, your personal preference, but just commenting on that.
It would be difficult to accommodate a deeper landing with the plan, and without compromising the efficiency of some of the rest of the layout. We had a little bit more than we needed, just to accommodate the grade change and for the steps with the recess, but not so much to afford a whole additional 3-foot landing. So it would be a very significant chunk out of the plan to fit that in.
Mm-hmm. Or I don't know, maybe even a side approach, and then rather than having the door be centered in that space, it could be off to the side so that you could actually turn right onto the landing and have some steps up and then inside. Just thought, nothing major. It just, when I first looked at it in plan, I didn't even realize that was a doorway because it felt it looked shallow on plan. So I thought it was like a window area or something like that. But just trying to improve upon that experience for someone to use that side entry. So let's see, are there any other, did everybody get a chance to speak who wants to speak?
We're still in the public hearing, so if there are members of the public, this would be the time for them.
Sorry. Yeah, are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Do we have any chat entries or emails?
There are no chat entries and no emails submitted.
Okay, and any raised, I don't see any raised hands from the public. So with that, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, this is a really funny project. There's, I think this has the potential to be a really, really good house. And you know, what it reminds me of, oddly enough, is the first impression was Charles Rennie Mackintosh, the Scottish architect, who did sort of industrial, not Tudor, but industrial Gothic, maybe Tudor, just beautiful, beautiful houses and large buildings. And you know, in particular, what I think is really, really nice about the left, right, and rear side is there's a sort of playful, asymmetrical approach to everything. And it's all very well balanced and it's very well articulated. But I've got to say that the front facade is a real disappointment. You know, given the other three facades and the sculpting of the rest of the building, the front facade is just flat. I mean, not flat as in no depth to it. It just doesn't sing. I think the other facades are just beautiful. I still don't know what to think about the black window frames and all that yet. But I think the front facade, I think you're missing some opportunities there. Is it approvable? Yeah, it's highly approvable, but you're missing an opportunity to turn this into an exceptional house, I think. So I have this very odd response to it. I'm disappointed and really excited by it at the same time. There's so much about the house reminds me of Macintosh that, and we don't see this kind of thing very often. So I think it's provable. I'll support it. I wish you'd go back and look at the front facade.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I had the same reaction, and especially I think it's amplified by the minimalist trim around the window. And I think flat is the correct word to describe it. The other elevations I think are pretty nice, but you know, when I was walking the neighborhood, I just had one impression, and that is that, you know, there's a single-story house on the left and there's a very modest two-story house on the right. And I wasn't sure. I mean, I think it's broken up enough, but maybe it's just that front elevation. But you know, across the street, there's a couple of really nice two-story houses that are that top floor it doesn't seem to have as much mass as maybe the front of this does. The rear elevation at first I was very concerned, but then understanding the 3 and 12 pitch back there, I guess you probably won't see that. So it'll look like it's broken up more. But I would agree. I think that I could move forward with this, but I think that the front elevation just needs another pass. But I think that you're close.
Oh yes, Commissioner Camarado.
Yeah, so I think it's a really nice design. Listening to Commissioner Loftus, I would agree. I think it's a little flat on the front, but overall, I do like the project, and I think you're going in the right direction. So thank you.
Commissioner Schmid.
I agree too. I like the project a lot. I'm excited about it. I think that the 3D, not even having to be really sophisticated, but I think a little 3D view would really help us understand a little bit more of the front. And I encourage that really on every design, I think. So I think that when you come back, I think that would help make then that next trip really easy for us. And again, I would look into the tree thing before you get too far along so that you know what you're up against there. But otherwise, I think it's a great project. So I'd like to move that we approve this and bring it back as an action item next time.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Schmid, seconded by Commissioner Loftus. Is there any discussion on the motion? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 5-0-0-2. We now move on to I think the last item for discussion is 9C 1814-1820 Ogden Drive. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? All right, seeing none, let the record note all commissioners have visited the project site, and may we have a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for environmental review, lot merger, design review, conditional use permit, and condominium permit for a new 6-story, 90-unit residential condominium building at 814 and 1820 Ogden Drive, zoned NBMU. The NBMU, or the North Burlingame Mixed Use Zoning District, is to implement the general plan, North Burlingame Mixed Use designation, by providing a distinct defining area at the city's North Gateway on El Camino Real, with housing and complementary commercial and office uses at urban densities. The project site is composed of 2 separate parcels. 814 Ogden Drive currently contains a 1-story office building, and 1820 Ogden Drive contains a 3-story office building. The project site is surrounded by multi-family residential buildings and the Sunrise Assisted Senior Living Facility. The Millbrae Multimodal Station is located just a half a mile away. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing buildings, merge the 2 parcels into 1 parcel, and construct the proposed project. The project would include 20 studio units, 15 one-bedroom units, and 55 two-bedroom units. 5 of the units would be below market rate for low-income households. The proposed project would provide a total of 145 on-site parking spaces located in 2 levels of parking, 1 at grade and 1 below grade. 45 of the 145 spaces would be provided in tandem configuration, and 66 spaces would be provided in puzzle stackers or a vehicle lift system. Vehicle lift systems and tandem parking is allowed with approval of a conditional use permit. The NBMU zoning includes tiered development standards requiring community benefits to be included in projects in order to achieve the highest residential densities and building heights. For this project, the applicant has elected to develop consistent with Tier 3 standards, which is the highest tier. Projects using Tier 3 standards are required to provide at least 3 community benefits, one of which must include an affordable housing objective. The proposed community benefits for this project include providing a larger public plaza, providing 100% of the total building energy load through renewable resources, and providing 5 below market rate units for low-income households. Environmental review of this project is required. Based on the proposed project, it is anticipated that the project qualifies for an infill development exemption. This evening, the Planning Commission should review and comment on the design of the project and also on the areas of potential environmental effects. The Commission should add any additional effects of the project that it believes should be addressed in the environmental document. The applicant will be also making a presentation this evening, but first, do you have any questions for staff?
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Let's see, any hands raised? Okay, seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Can the applicant please step forward and state your name and make any presentation or any words that you would like?
Yes, my name is Franco Zaragoza, and I'm with the architecture firm, Levy Design Partners. And I'll be giving just a quick overview presentation of the development. Okay, so I'd like to run through the design and development process for the project. I'm going to do a quick overview of the site location, our site analysis, integration of our zoning controls, site access, our setbacks, and just the overall organization of the building, massing, and exterior design. You can see our site is located mid-block between Murchison Drive to the north and Truesdale Drive to the south. We are also conveniently located about a quarter of a mile to El Camino Real and just a little over a half a mile to the Millbrae Transit Center. Contextually, we are positioned between existing multi-unit and multi-story buildings that are directly adjacent to us and across the street. Next slide, please. This is a pictorial overview sort of our adjacent context. It's notable to point out that our direct neighbors are comprised of multi-unit, multi-story residential buildings. I'd like to just guide you through this page. It could be a little confusing. So using the key plan at the bottom right corner of the map for our bearings, let's start with the image 1. So the image 1 is our building that is directly to the north of our property edge. It's a 4-story residential property. And image 6, sort of in the central bottom center of our page, is the senior assisted living property. It's directly to our south edge of the building. And image 2, 3, 4, and 5 are the properties directly across the street from our building. And just to note, they're all multi-unit, multi-story residential buildings. Compositionally, these properties establish the current neighborhood, residential scale. And then contextually, we try to pick up some cues moving forward. And I just want to highlight a couple that I observe and how we observed in moving forward. The number one is just the varied and high quality use of materials, the stepping and grouping of forms, organization of windows and bays, all play to contribute to the residential scale. Another notable element I want to bring back are all these properties have large setbacks to the building. So none of the buildings are currently right at the property line. There's always a landscape buffered edge. Next slide, please. So moving forward in our analysis, we proposed sort of an extensive review before we dove into the actual design. And during this review is our site analysis, where we evaluated the solar orientation and the positional shape of our site. Having a deep site with a narrow facing street edge, we had to incorporate sort of the solar orientation the best we could. So we took that and we placed the central courtyard as our anchor point of the property. We positioned our building around this courtyard, and the courtyard is going to provide private decks, common areas. It allows for sort of a focused, privatized experience for those inward units, mitigating the full effect that it could have on our southern facing building. So on the north facade, we also tried to incorporate private decks that would offer a relief and buffer to the adjacent property as well. On the rear of our development, we have a sewer easement going through sort of diagonally through our site, but we worked with Public Works, achieving the required access and setbacks to allow our buildable area. Incorporating this easement, it benefited our overall design quite early, where we were able to utilize the added space and features of that area to provide suitable biotreatment area for the entire impervious area of our property. At the front, we uncovered some existing utilities underneath our sidewalk. So it moved us to position our street trees within our property. This was a strategy that, again, aligns with our adjacent property to our north. And as staff has mentioned, we are utilizing the Tier 3 developmental standards. And one of our community benefits is integrating the public plaza, as you can see, sort of central on our property. Next slide, please. This is our grade level plan along the Ogden Drive frontage. We have positioned our central plaza. It's integrated with landscaping along the sidewalk edge, carrying that established neighborhood rhythm of the trees. The plaza is placed to adjoining interior space that will be resident common community room area. It's a place where the residents can have active uses. Our lobby and residential approach to the building is along the northwest edge, where these spaces provide areas for residents and visitors to gather to interface with some basic amenities such as storage and parcel areas. The southern corner of our site is where we placed our vehicle entrance, providing minimal impact to the overall programmed area of our front facade. Landscaping allows for a separation buffer, and we placed our parking garage tucked behind the active uses facing the street. With staff's mentioned, we have 84 spaces at this level with the use of tandem and puzzle stackers, and a vehicle ramp taking down to the basement level where we'll have the remaining 61 spaces. Next slide, please. This is a typical residential plan. We are looking at the podium plan for this level. It's similar to the upper floors where the corridor and placement of units consists of 18 units per floor. As I mentioned, we've configured the building to anchor around our courtyard. So we have a double loaded corridor arrangement with the focal point looking towards our courtyard, providing sort of an inward view along those edges. The courtyard has private patios positioned and access within the units. A central common area which contains an open air pavilion trellis as a focal point. Courtyard also provides planters along the edges and buffers from the privatized patios for an added layer sense of privacy. At the upper floors, we'll have some decks staggered for privacy with added sun exposure. And we've designed the building fully within our required setbacks, 10-foot side setbacks, 15-foot rear yard setbacks with the sewer easement, 15-foot front setback, and the integrated additional setbacks under the Tier 3 development guidelines. Next slide, please. So this is a quick diagram just to run through the Tier 3 developmental zoning controls for the massing of this area. The zoning controls outline that additional setbacks occur at the buildable setback line starting at 35 feet. We have a 35-foot line here indicating where the building requires to set back 5 feet. 35% of the area is required to set back the 5 feet. We've met that, and we've indicated areas where we even set back the building further. At 55 feet, there's a required area to set back 80% of the building 10 feet from the buildable area. Again, it's highlighted in red, showing where our building steps and incorporates those setbacks. Again, we took the contextual cues of our site to fully understand the intent of the zoning controls. We wanted to provide the composition that aligns with the neighborhood, articulation, the grouping of the windows, the material, and all within to achieve the allowable density. Next slide, please. This is a perspective rendering which illustrates the overall composition. We've articulated the scale to meet the zoning guidelines, provided the rhythm of form that relates to the geometry of our neighbors. We're utilizing sunscreens that, again, give subtle indication to our adjacent property neighbors with cornices. We're using front decks, providing residential scale, and the incorporation of high quality materials also complements our surrounding neighbors in context. At the grade level, we have designed an experience where we have the front facing storefront glazing as a backdrop to the public plaza, encouraging active uses. And our lobby sort of directs and and invites people inward, placed along the 2-story volume. And again, we're using high quality materials at the base. It's going to translate vertically up. And we see this as a quality addition to the neighborhood. On that note, I will end my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Loftus?
Just out of curiosity, how far is it from the face of your project to the Sunrise project adjacent? Any sense of that?
So to the project that is the senior
Yeah.
assisted living property, is that right? Yeah, so we have a 10-foot side setback, and their property is set back the width of their driveway, which it looks like it's a 2-way driveway. So that could be an additional, 15, 20 feet.
So maybe it's 40 feet total or something like
Yeah,
that.
so it's probably
for code reasons anyway, I suspect. Okay. And is there any, I'm trying to figure out what they see and what the people who live in this new project would see of the senior living facility and what the senior living facility folks would see of that raised courtyard. If you got any sense of that, can you talk through that?
Yeah. Staff, do you guys have the side elevations in our drawings? I could show him sort of the rundown. The basic essence is that our ground floor plan is about 13 feet from grade. So the podium is going to be around that area. The site does taper back towards the back of our building, so it could be even taller. Yeah, here's a good elevation. The bottom elevation. So we have punched openings along the sort of the first level of that courtyard, and those are to add sort of privacy yet viewable views out. It's creating sort of an environment rather than just an open courtyard looking into your building. So you are kind of creating that sort of protected experience within the property. And you can see, we do have some windows facing outward. Our building lines, the adjacent property is, I can't see the elevation very well here.
Well, I guess
about 2 floors lower than this property.
Real point of my question is if there's a gathering of folks out there in the courtyard and they're standing up against the edge looking towards the senior living facility, are they looking down into people's rooms, or is there any screening there, or what's the interaction? What's that sort of interaction look like between the senior living and inhabitants and the people who are hanging out outside in that courtyard?
We have conceptually designed the courtyard as not being like a party space. That if you look at the landscape plan, it's more of a contemplative space. And so we've divided, specifically we've increased the private open space in the courtyard. So it was not meant to be like a party space. So there is a gathering space, but a lot of the, you see all the green areas marked off. So that's what it was conceived as, that there is a community room downstairs, but up here, we incorporated that wall specifically so it would be, a sort of an environmental buffer to the courtyard space at this podium level. Does that answer your question?
It helps, yeah. Thank you.
Oh, yes, Commissioner Camerado.
Thank you so much for bringing this to our this project in front of us. My one question is, and it'll probably relate to the CC&Rs, will you have a certain amount of people that are allowed on that balcony or that deck to kind of help eliminate the noise? I know that it's not very big, but have you guys considered what the CCNRs might include for that decking up there? Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. Maybe that's one of those items that we can discuss as we go through it. Thank you.
Commissioner Schmidt. Commissioner Schmidt, you might be muted.
Yes, I am. So can you describe a little bit more kind of the furniture or the activities that you see happening in the plaza down at the front?
Sure. So the front plaza's use is currently pretty open for activities to occur for small gatherings. There are some seated areas, some benches going to be aligned around the perimeters. What we could see here are, a place for small community to do a little art gathering. Could be a little poetry read, just small neighborhood gatherings. There are going to be sort of informal picnic-like tables scattered around, but mostly just small breakout space for the community.
Mm-hmm. Have you considered some maybe more permanent kinds of landscape furniture pieces to go in here? That may, I'm concerned about the tables and chairs because if they're going to sit out and deteriorate or they're going to leave. So I'm trying to think more creatively from a landscape architect point of view of what you guys might integrate into that public space that does make it usable. I agree and I applaud it, but I also don't want it to just be a big open space that's empty because the furniture's gone or the furniture got destroyed kind of thing. And could it be a bit more substantially done, given that it is a community benefit and you're not hiding it away? Whereas, the upper plaza, I think that that's great with the furniture that you got going on there. And that's not going to go running away. And that's going to be easier to put a cover on and keep nice. The front here is definitely a public thing. So therefore, considering a more public, friendly, resistant landscape design, or really a hardscape design, really more than landscape, but to integrate in there.
Sure. Yeah, we could definitely look at that. Part of the strategy, I think, also was to keep sight lines pretty visible. So we didn't go down the path of integrating seat walls, but we could look at the integration of some strategized seating to allow that transparency still.
I think without any programming, it's just going to be open space. With some programming, you could drive that use.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gall, did you still? Yes.
Yeah. I wanted to go into the Tier 3 development standards. So I know that the county kind of sets some of these the affordable housing standards, and I know that they set these limits for income. Do you have an idea of what the rents might be on some of those units that would be affordable? I mean, maybe based on past experience. I know you've done some of these projects before.
These are going to be at the very low income and that, of the median income of the area. So I suspect they're more like, I don't know what the rent is, but they'll be qualified. I think, Catherine, I know you're on. I think it's more like 80% of the median area income for the lowest tier. So, and they decide what the rent is at there is I guess I don't know, a commission that administers the affordable housing, and they decide what the rent is based on what the area median income is at the time of the rental. That is totally outside of our hands.
And I've had that experience before, but found them very difficult to deal with. I was just wondering if you guys had success. I mean, if you knew kind of what the rents were supposed to be.
Well, these won't be rents because it's a for sale product.
Oh, okay.
So it's going to be, I suspect you could get a 2-bedroom apartment for something like $350,000, $400,000.
Okay.
You know, so it's based on, and that's only because our interest rates are so low. If the interest rates were higher, then the developer could charge less.
Right. Okay. And then if you were going down to your zero net energy, I think that's commendable. I'm anxious to see if you can actually pull that off. The solar panels are easy. How about the wind turbines? What do you envision there? I mean, you're not going to have any of those those propellers like out at Altamont, right?
No.
What do you, I'm not familiar with anything small or on a, a scale like this for wind. Do you have anything you could share with us on that, or how the wind would be generating energy for you?
I think it's more based on purchasing the energy, besides designing at a very low energy use, it's also purchasing energy from a renewable source. So that's how you make up the difference without putting a wind turbine on top of your roof.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, I know that there are some small ones, but I don't know how many.
No. Yeah, no, it's a combination of strategies, but all that include purchasing the power from a renewable source.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, let's see. Any other raised hands? I have a couple of questions. One small one is on A0.3. There shows a little area in the lobby that it's not shown anywhere else on the other plans. I don't know if it's a mail area or.
Yeah, so the little space directly adjacent to the bike storage room is our parcel boxes.
Mm-hmm.
So those will be open into the main lobby, and then we have a separate package room that is across from this bike storage room.
Okay, so they're just not reflected on some of the other plans. That's not an omission or anything. It's just a drafting thing that will get updated. You still intend to have this parcel area going forward. Okay, and then how is the rear yard accessed? Through the rear stairs?
Yeah, so there's a rear stair access for egress purposes as well. Mm-hmm. And there will be side gates and fences for access around the whole perimeter of the building. We are also providing this access for fire. So it's going to be a walkable path around the entire perimeter of our property.
Okay. And there's no furniture or anything, gathering space planned in this area?
No. As I mentioned, the far rear of our property, we are using that as mostly our bio retention for our pervious area.
Mm-hmm. But so you can still walk across it, and
it's not going to be programmed for any active uses. It's just more for Toby.
Oops.
It is also required on our easement that we are not, our sanitary easement, we are not allowed to do anything. We're not allowed to build across it. We can't have bays across it. We really investigated this really high. They don't want people back there. It became so effectively we couldn't even build anything really to cross it because that would be in violation of the easement that exists on the property.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah, it's certainly.
Yeah, so it renders a good portion of our site unbuildable, really.
Mm-hmm. And not even really enjoyable in that far corner there as outdoor space.
Getting, then what do you do to get there? And I mean, we're willing to investigate it, but we've had a very difficult time getting any concessions on the easement from from Public Works.
But the easement is like grade. Right, it's below grade, so you can walk across. It's not like you need a bridge to go across the easement.
But how do you walk across? They want to be able to dig it up at a moment's notice and not make you whatever, restore it and stuff like that.
Okay. Having visited the site, I was really pleasantly surprised to see how much space is between the Sunrise senior living area and your public space on your second level podium. It felt very open air. It didn't have any concerns potentially about any privacy from any of the units across the way. But I was just a little bit worried about the solar pattern there. I know you showed earlier in your presentation the solar path, and is because it's at the second floor and it's a 6-story building, is a good amount of it going to be in shade by afternoon?
Yeah, I mean, I think we made the choice of locating it over here in deference to the fact that on the other side, there weren't units that opened up there. So we felt we could build closer. So we opted to put the courtyard, and we really see the courtyard as a place for private open space for our units. It's not meant, it's to look at and to use for your, as a lot of units have decks that open up to it or units that open up to it. So we were less concerned about the sun getting in there as opposed to the other things that contributed to having the courtyard there. So, it's a balancing act.
Okay, thank you. Are there any, let's see, are there any other commissioners' questions before I ask the public? See anybody with their hands up? Would anybody from the public like to speak on this item or ask questions? Do we have any chat entries or emails?
There are no chats and no emails.
Okay, one last chance for people to figure out how to raise their hand. Okay, so with that, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners? Commissioner Loftus?
I think this is a really nice project. I think it takes, it does some nice things for the site. It feels like it fits well in the neighborhood, given the types of surrounding uses. It's well articulated. It's got some interesting materials. My one concern when I saw it was the potential party deck, and it sounds like it's not much of a party deck. But we don't always have complete control over that, but the fact that it's not rental apartments, that it's owned condos makes a difference, I think, because I suspect that, owners who are looking onto that deck couldn't tolerate a whole lot of noise on a regular basis, and the community sort of self-regulates. That adjacency, if it became a party deck in the adjacency next to the senior living facility, I think that would be not a good thing, but it feels like a low probability to me. I always have concerns about the puzzle stackers, but that's just because they're so new. There's a lot of puzzle stackers here, but again, these are condos, and the owners will not tolerate very well, not being able to park there. So I suspect that, it's not an apartment where you have to wait for somebody to come in, an apartment building where you have to wait for somebody to come and fix it, and they might or might not come and fix it. These folks live here. They own the building. They own the puzzle stackers, and I suspect that, again, that's low probability. So, I feel pretty good about the project. I think it's. I do believe we looked at it a year and a half ago or so, and I think it's nice. I think it's a very nice project. I'd like to see it move forward. Obviously, we have to address environmental concerns, and the obvious ones are parking and traffic. Those are issues that need to be studied, and we need some comfort level that, this doesn't overburden the neighborhood, or, significantly change the, what do they call them, the levels of service at the major intersections surrounding. But I think it's a good project.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I was going to bring up the traffic also, especially with the other project up the street that we're seeing moving forward. I just want to make sure that that traffic is looked at in the environmental study. The other one is, and I'm just recalling from the other project up the street, there's supposed to be a water management plan developed by the city in 2020, and we have not seen that. So I would like to see that completed and brought forward in the environmental in the environmental document and the CEQA paperwork, so that we can be sure that we're, it's easy to say we're going to have enough water and that there will be enough, but the more we're building, the less we're going to get, because we don't just get as much water as we want. So I want to make sure that that's addressed.
Commissioner Camarado?
Yeah, I think it's a really nice project. I think they've done a great job. I think my concern is the amount of traffic on that deck. But I think if we can confirm that when they get to the CCNRs that there's some limiting factors of how many people are on that deck, perhaps that could be something that we request on the next go round. I'd like to see the front landscaping for the front of the building. I'd like to see a little bit more there, but overall, I think it's a great project and look forward to it coming in front of us with the other information that we'll get. Thank you.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes, I too think it's a good project. A couple things maybe for next is materials board. I didn't see a materials board in the bin for tonight's meeting, so it'd be really good to have that for the next time. I think that there's an opportunity maybe for an axon look into that second deck, that upper courtyard of what does it look like kind of from the senior housing location looking down in. I think that the wall will do substantially what you intend it to do, but I think if you have the opportunity with a SketchUp model to look in there, that would be a terrific add for us to be able to understand that. And then as Commissioner Camarado said, a little bit more on that front plaza, on how to program that and make it, integrate with the landscaping with a bit more hardscaping so that it's usable, maintainable, and all for everybody. So those are my main concerns, and I'd like to see the project go forward as well.
Yeah, so I also echo a lot of my fellow commissioners' comments. I think I like how the application of materials on the building, along with the articulation that's happening on the outside, how that helps to kind of play down the height of the structure and a little bit more relatable to its neighbors. So I think that's very well done. I too would like to see a materials board for the proposed finishes on the building, as well as an example of the windows that are planned for the structure. I actually spent a lot of time sitting in the middle of the street, studying various angles of this building or proposed building and the neighboring buildings, and was surprised at how peaceful it was on the street, and no cars were in front of me or behind me honking me to leave. And so it can't help to also think about traffic concerns as this building is built out along with the other proposed development down the street, and how that could change that landscape from a driver's perspective. So that traffic study will be important to understand, and especially inclusive of what may be happening as well with the other development. And I too would like to see some more programming developed along the front plaza, and definitely some durable materials and furniture that look like they're intended to stay on the premises. So, but very nice job. I too would like to see this move forward. And with that, I will move to bring this back on our action calendar.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Say, seconded by Commissioner Camarado. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 5002. This action is not appealable. So we now move on to agenda item number 10, commissioners' reports. I believe there are none tonight. And so we move on to agenda item number 11, directors' reports.
Right, so tonight there are no FYIs, and if Kevin is available, I think he was going to share a little bit about the last two city council meetings.
Yes, so the city council meeting on January 19th had an item related to unpermitted construction and demolition, which seems kind of timely. We had a council member who in particular wanted to bring this forward as it is a kind of perennial issue here in Burlingame. So no decisions were made, but it's a conversation the council wants to have in terms of trying to prevent provide more deterrence for either projects going too far with building without permits, coming in for FYIs when it's really right at the finish line, or taking down structures that are not permitted to be demolished. So it's something that we're looking at. We're looking at what other cities are doing and what state law allows us and doesn't allow to do. And it's an item that'll come back to the council. Maybe in the joint meeting, that may be something that both the city council and the planning commission would want to discuss in a couple months. But that was a matter of discussion. And if you read the Daily Journal, there was a little bit of coverage on that as well this morning. Then on the most recently on Saturday, there was the city council goals meeting. That was one that was Zoom bombed, which is why we've implemented all of these different safeguards for this meeting. And fortunately, we were not bombed. Hope I'm not jinxing it for the last 2 minutes of this, but and most of the discussion, there was a lot of discussion over the city's finances, and then also the COVID recovery, particularly related to economic development, to try to help businesses in the next year to get back in the swing of things and try to get back on their feet. So our economic development subcommittee of the city council will be very busy in this next year. There were quite a few things that were agendized for that committee, but the intent is to help the businesses here in Burlingame in recovering and getting back up to speed.
Wonderful, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
And then one other thing, our next meeting on February 8th will start at 6 o'clock. We'll have a study session for the North Rollins Road specific plan. So we're coming back now. We have some use alternatives and also some streetscape and open space concepts. So that should be fun. We'll just have it from 6 to 7 as we did before, and it'll be kind of like your own little focus group. So we'll provide you a reminder of that.
Camarado, did you have a question?
Yeah, Kevin, real quick. What's going on with the Chapin Lane project? Do we get any input on that, or is that going to be coming in front of us, or is that just something from the community, or is that just city council? Because I think
so the Chapin Lane, Ruben may also speak to it, but they withdrew their application, and our understanding is it will not be coming back. They're looking at the possibility of an accessory dwelling unit instead.
Oh, no. Sorry, not Chapin, the project, Chapin, the streetscape. On the
right. Sorry. I was thinking Chapin Lane. I'm not, we can check in with Public Works on that. I know they did start a streetscape project, and I will admit I'm not really sure what the status is myself.
Yeah, that's all I know about it is Public Works is starting something to get some input. Let me see if I can find something on their website and we can push it out to all of you. Perhaps there might be a survey or some thoughts that you can all share.
Thank you. That'd be
So
great.
we can look into that.
Thank you. Any other
Did
questions?
we all not get an email about that recently? I know I did, and I hit on the button and it showed me a couple alternatives to look at.
For the streetscape?
Yeah, for Chapin. So I somebody's done something and put it together. So I'd imagine you guys have it too. You just maybe didn't look.
I wonder if that came in the e-newsletter out to you. Do you remember, John? Did that came through the
I
e-news?
think it was an e-newsletter, but I can't seem to find it, and I don't know. Maybe it's on Burlingame website.
Well, I'll look it up tomorrow morning and I'll forward it to all of you so you have it.
I mean, it came to my commissioner's email.
I didn't see it in my email.
Okay, we can forward it to you.
Thank you. There's nothing else. Thank you very much for all in attendance. I am now going to adjourn the meeting at 10:37 p.m.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
And everybody.
Night.
Oh, bye-bye.
Night, everyone.
Good night.